Welcome, all you various forms of human beings. This is episode 109, believe it or not, of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast that goes by the identifying title of Look Out, Sir. My name is Dan, and it's that bit at the beginning of the show where I introduce my friend Phil. How's it going, Philip?
Hello. I'm doing okay. I'm down slightly with a cold. I'm on the upward curve of recovery. You sound like you're somewhat on the downward curve of this spiral of illness.
Well, you would be correct in assuming that, my voice as it is at this moment in time is the result of some form of illness. But
Is it just partying?
Absolutely. It was the sickness was my need to boogie, or more specifically, celebrate the union of a friend and someone up until a couple of days ago I actually didn't ever meet before. But, I was happy for them both. They got wed. Lovely times. Went to a wedding. Midweek wedding, Phil. Midweek wedding. Who does those anymore, eh? God, had to take a day off work and everything. Mad times. It was in a faraway place as well, Phil. Somewhere near Cambridge or something. Somewhere up that way. God, it was a long old drive because it was further up than Cambridge.
Oh, right. Well, that's funny. I was in Cambridge on the weekend.
Were you? Well, there you go. If only we had known that, it would have made no difference whatsoever.
No, it wouldn't have.
Absolutely. But no, yeah, I went to a wedding and my friend had a weight of expectation upon me that I need, get involved on the dance floor, throw some shapes, as is my wont. Because, I'm an excellent dancer, Phil, as well, And I love your grin. It says everything while saying nothing. But anyway, yeah, so that's how that went. And I got a little loud, as is my way. And that was the whole thing. So yeah, apologies if my voice is a little hoarse today. I got to be honest, though, Phil. It's again, I mean, it's hard for me right now to even summon up I don't even know what to be able to produce episode 109. This is one of those instances where doing a podcast is a right old pain in the bum. So thank you, Phil, for hopefully carrying me through this ensuing content creation that we are about to embark
Exactly.
on.
I'm sure I can muster enough enthusiasm to talk about this episode because it features the Guard.
The Guard? What are Guard, Phil? I have never heard of them.
No, I know, but we won't be talking about the Krieg. We'll be talking about, I hope we're going to be talking about the Cadians and the...
the Astra Militarum. That's what I was expecting you to say.
Oh, yes.
No one calls them Guard.
No, that's true. I'm an old hat. In fact, I don't really like to say them. I'm a convert to the Astra Militarum.
Are you on board with that?
I am, despite the memes of Clint Eastwood and whichever other person gets painted as to look like an officer. I'm sure you've seen that meme around.
Jeff Bridges?
No.
Oh. Well, there you go. I haven't seen that meme, so I'll go and look out for it in between segments. But no, yes, when we did when did it change to Astra Militarum? It was like 6 odd years ago now, wasn't it?
I think it was 7th edition.
It was a 7th edition. Yeah. No, 8th edition, wasn't it? Where
7th.
It got official.
Because 6th edition was the old Imperial Guard Codex. 7th edition was the one that had the Commissar on the front, which was Astra Militarum.
You're correct. I just peered over to the 7th edition bookshelf.
These are the sorts of questions that should be on the quiz, but Richard never throws me something that, challenges my knowledge, except that one time on the big fat quiz of the year where I was asked a Krieg specific question that I eventually got right, but through the answer to Toke. No, not Toke. Tim. That's it. That was a question from Toke. That was it. Yeah.
Yes. Should we move on to the 5-star review before we talk about Warzone Octarius?
Well, let's just clarify. Today we're talking about Warzone Octarius.
Oh, sorry. I thought we'd done that, but I guess we haven't.
Well, we're talking about Cadians.
As part
of Warzone Octarius book, we're also going to talk about the Deathwatch. They've got a special kill team extra rules, armies of Renown, and
armies of Renown.
We also, if we've got time, we're going to throw in some fortifications.
I think we've got time for fortifications this week. Absolutely. I'm going to hopefully try and keep this podcast on time to be something close to the 3 hour mark, because it's approaching 9 o'clock now, and I would really like to be asleep before 12. I'm so tired, Phil. So tired.
Well, you've only got our fans to thank/blame, and our Patreon supporters as well. Thank you very much, Patreon supporters. You keep us going when people like Dan are tired and want to go to sleep. It's for you we stay up late.
I hate you all. 5-star review.
Come on now, Timmy. You've got your orders. You've got to do it.
But I don't want to, sir.
You've got your orders. Now get up there, get over that trench, and get me that 5-star review, and get it back here right away.
Okay, sir.
This week's 5-star review comes from, bear in mind, I was joking when I said I hate you all. I don't really. I love you greatly, though you make me suffer. Anyway, it comes from where, Phil?
Apple Podcasts. I'm going to go again from last week's one. Was it Sweden? I'm going to say Sweden.
I mean, you tell me, Phil. Are you saying Sweden again? Well, Phil, I'm afraid to tell you, this week's 5-star review comes from Apple Podcasts of the United States of America.
Liar. I'm sure there's one from Sweden. It's got to come up eventually.
There could be. I mean, we do well, Phil, in the Swedens. But we also do quite well in Americas. You can cheat at this game quite tremendously just by seeing what I did last week and then just going one up. I don't want to give you the cheat.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure the one you read out last week was the one just below the one from Sweden, which is why I thought it'd be the one from Sweden. But that was my memory from last week.
Hang on, let me go back and look. So we had, last week was ketchup, turnip duck, 1201. And then, this week it's the KT84.
Brilliant.
Which, there you go. KT84. I was in a school as a younger man, and our form, because in British schools, or at least English schools, to the best of my knowledge, back in the 90s, they would organise you into groupings, which were called forms, and you were given a form tutor, and you were given a title based on the name of said tutor. So I was, during my time at secondary school, part of year KT. So like 7 KT, 8 KT, 9 KT, 10 KT, 11 KT. And that's when I stopped. There was no 12. Anyway, so there you go. Maybe this is that guy. Maybe it's my old form tutor.
Is Katie not a girl's name?
Well, no, but it's just the initials, KT.
Oh, Katie. Sorry, when you said Katie, I thought it was Katie's in KATY or IE.
No.
KT, well, as in Kill Team 84.
Maybe that's it. The Kill Team 84. We'll never know for sure. But nonetheless, this individual has left us a 5-star review that reads, not the Beatles, more akin to Blur. Do you like that, Phil? The fact that
I do.
Someone has called out our never-ending
comparison
Breaking America reference.
To the Beatles. But I'll take Blur. Blur's a good band. I like them.
I met a guy at the wedding the other day who had a bunch to say about the Beatles.
I was hoping.
I remember very little about.
I was hoping you were going to say a member of Blur at the wedding.
No, I didn't meet a member of Blur. I didn't meet a member of Blur, nor did I meet a member of the Beatles. Although I can't be honest and tell you, is it just Ringo and Paul? Yes, they're the only two left, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Or is Ringo not with us anymore? Not that Ringo's ever been with us. I've spent no time with Ringo.
I'm sure he's still kicking around.
Well, there we go. Anyway, not the Beatles, Phil. More akin to Blur. 5 stars, which is, of course, a prerequisite of a 5-star review. And if you would like to leave us a 5-star review, please do so, because it helps us become even more popular. And that's what we want, right? That's what we all desire. Popular. Oh, they love me.
First, it was the Americas, and then it was world domination.
Absolutely. It is our ongoing aspiration to I don't know. I don't really know. There's never really been much of a plan to all of this. It just keeps going on seemingly in perpetuity.
I know it was a fun segment, and now we're just roped into doing it forever now as part of.
Well, exactly. Not that we begrudge it. We love it. Thank you so much for 5-star reviews. So this 5-star review reads, Lee. God, you can tell I'm not in my best way today. Right. These lads have found the perfect Phil blend of rambling and informative that one demands for a 5-star review. I have often heard references to a mysterious third host from the days of yore, but as I have not seen or heard the one they call Joe, I can only assume that he is a figment of their collective imaginations. Now, I will interrupt this just to say, if Joe was a figment of our collective imaginations, I feel like we are selling ourselves relatively short. Surely, if you and I, Phil, were going to collectively imagine an entity and call that individual Joe, we'd come up with something better than what Joe actually is.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a sort of inept buffoon of our imaginations, if that's what we were going for. Maybe we've got lazy minds.
Yeah, it's a representation of our low cognitive reasoning. I don't mean that, of course. Joe's a lovely boy. We love him dearly. I hope to get him back one day soon. Not on a full-time basis. We've moved past that now. But, now and again, odds and sods, much like Richie.
Exactly.
He can fill the odd Richie spot here and there. Get him on the quiz. Oh, it'd be a lovely thing. Anyway, I would recommend this podcast if you like witty banter, and I'm sure we've done a good job of demonstrating that thus far, a dry sense of humor, and Warhammer 40,000. Keep up the good work, guys. Isn't that nice, Phil?
It's very nice. Very nice indeed.
Do you feel like our banter, or rather sense of humor, is dry, Phil? I feel like it's relatively moist.
bit wet. Is that what you're after?
Yeah, absolutely. A bit drippy.
I imagine it probably is a bit dry. It's in a good way. Everyone likes. No one wants it to be too humid.
That is true. Much like my, little office room is right now. Oh, it's warm, despite the outside world being relatively cold. But there you go. Too many technologies in one place. It's a maddening thing. But anyway, the KT84, thank you so much for your 5-star review. And to elaborate on that sentiment, Phil.
Kill Team 84, thank you very much for your kind words. Yeah, we're a bit dry. We're a bit slippery when wet, so that's why we have to be dry. You see,
like a Weetabix.
Otherwise, there's these signs that you have to put up, say slippery floor. We might be a trip hazard if we're too wet with our humour. So that's why we're dry, obviously. But thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Maybe the fictional imagination of Joe will be manifested and reappear one day on the show.
Now and again.
And then you'll realise why he's no longer on it. Car crash radio.
Well, absolutely. He's a beautiful boy.
We love him then.
Anyway, there you go. That was the introduction to episode 109. Let's get on with it. Oh, and thank you, Patreon. Thank you to those who have considered or have, in fact, bought merchandise. Leave us a 5-star review if you'd like. Otherwise, subscribe or something. I don't know. You got any more, Phil?
I was going to say, speaking of merch, I am coincidentally wearing another Lookout Sir t-shirt underneath my top.
Crikey.
You can't see it. No one can see it. Dan can't see it because it's underneath my top. Can you guess which one it is, though? It's a little game we're going to play.
It's going to be in a crow's manner.
Oh, you're correct. Well done.
You know why I know? Because I've seen you wearing it before, and it's a grey t-shirt, and you can see the grey.
Damn it!
Poking out through your thing there. But I thought for a moment there, Phil, you were going to tell us you were designing new merchandise, but obviously you haven't.
Well, I could do if people will promise to buy it.
Sort it out, mate.
Then I will.
Now. Is that how it works?
Yes. Yeah.
You're not going to apply the Field of Dreams style methodology.
Oh, if I make
build it and they will come.
I mean, I'll try that as well. I've got some good ideas. I've got some good ideas. I just need the time.
Well, let's see them. Much like fictional Joe.
Manifest.
Let's see them manifest in reality.
I'll give it my best shot.
Make them corporeal. Is that the right word? Corporeal?
Yeah, that's a word. Yeah.
Nice. But is it right in that context?
Yes.
All right. I admire your conviction. Transitional noise. Woo! All right, then. In this part of the podcast, myself and Phil are going to talk about Codex Supplement Cadia, found within the pages of Book 1, Rising Tide, Warzone Octarius, page 56 to 59. Ooh, fancy times. Astra Militarum, the Cadians. They're popular, aren't they, Phil? I heard they got a new upgrade sprue recently, so we best attempt to try and give them some good rules and shift some units.
Because they certainly didn't get a new planet.
Well, you know, the entire Imperial realm appears to be where the Cadians dwell now. You know,
They're everywhere. They're like ants. Do you want it?
They're an ideology.
Do you want to get Cadians? Because that's how you get Cadians.
Like ants, just spreading in their little hives.
They're everywhere. They should all be dead by now, but they're still there. They're still kicking around. Wasn't
there some kind of like thing at one point where they were talking about the idea that Cadians as a concept have kind of become the kind of popular idealized version of Astra Militarum, thus other Astra Militarum regiments are heavily influenced by them. So it's not that they are Cadia in terms of their place of origin, but they heavily replicate that style of warfare.
You're saying they're like Mandalorians. It's like they're not a people, they're a creed.
Potentially. I mean, you know, is that what they've gone on to become? As I say, an ideology.
I think they're done to represent the well, they are like meant to be the gold standard of Astra Militarum units, like the standard style. And I think their equipment is meant to be very universal and to an extent generic, which is why they are the basic kit, and they can be painted up any ways to represent other armies on other planets that still also have the same Cadian armor, I guess, because that's the standard pattern of armor. You know, potentially the armor that the Cadians wear is produced on Forge World somewhere, so it's not necessarily Cadian specific. It's normally a particular pattern of lasgun that's manufactured in different, you know, Hive Worlds or Forge Worlds, for example, and they just have a certain combination of armor and weapons that creates that look. But yeah, I guess it makes sense that they're the ones that other planets might aspire to be like and want to fight in a similar way or have similar weapons and war gear, maybe.
Honor the dead.
Press F for Cadia.
Press F for Cadia. What's F do?
Pay your respects.
Is that how you do it? Press F?
Yeah. Did you not know the meme?
No, I'm not familiar with that meme.
Right. So I believe it comes because I didn't know this until it was a few years ago. I learned it. Basically, in a Call of Duty game, you're at a memorial service. A person's being lowered into the ground because they've died, one of your soldier compatriots, and it's a bit of a cut scene. So you go up to the coffin, I guess, and it says press F because you have to press the F button.
Oh, of course.
And then you pay your respects and the action continues. And the meme is now press F for when, you know, you want to pay your respects because something's died. So whenever you see a trope of, oh, this regiment's being squatted, you'll see people just have the word F or press F in the chat. And that's where it comes from.
Well, there you go.
You've got to go to that Know Your Memes website. It tells you everything.
Well, there you go. I'll spend some time there. I'll swat up on my memes. But before I do that, I'm going to swat up on Cadia and all of the stuff found within. So Cadia, if I'm not mistaken, as a regiment under normal circumstances, is that one that rerolls hits? Isn't that about right?
Yeah. So if you do not move, so you remain stationary, you get to reroll ones to your hit roll. If you are infantry and you use the take aim order, which is reroll ones to hit, it doesn't combo. So if you're Cadia, you haven't moved, and you do take aim, you get to reroll all your hits.
Nice.
So Cadia is very good at being stationary and shooting.
Does it have any vehicle-specific benefits? Or
no, it just combos. So if your vehicles don't move, they get to reroll ones to their hit roll.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But there's an additional benefit. So normally there you have effectively a take aim for your tank commanders, but instead they get a Cadian specific tank order, which allows them to reroll the number of shots, which is similar to the Catachan doctrine. So if you don't, move with your, or you move under, actually no, you just have to not move with your tanks. So you get to double shoot because you're doing your grinding advance. You're Cadian, so you get to reroll ones to hit, and you do the order, which allows you to reroll the number of shots. So you can actually be quite shooty and good with Cadian, but you're just limited by not being able to move very much. So that's its downside, because it's a very static way of playing.
Stand and deliver. Fair enough. So this is a series of warlord traits, relics, and stratagems that bolster the already existing Cadia things. To the best of my understanding, Cadia has 3 specific characters within the pages of the Astra Militarum book. They've got Pask,
Yeah.
the guy who smokes a cigar,
Creed.
and the guy that has a banner that stands next to him.
Colour Sergeant Kel, although he's even still a character. I remember he died ages ago.
He did, but he is very much still a character.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe.
Yeah, so let's just quickly check this one.
We'll just quickly check. What are the Cadia characters? Are they the only 3? Did they get any others? Because all the other ones are like Catachan, aren't they? Or Catachan.
Yeah, obviously you've also got Yarek, who's generic and can go with any army.
Yeah. He's more associated with Armageddon, though, isn't he?
Yes, and still Legion to an extent. Yeah, Colour Sergeant Kel is still a character. I'm surprised. But he's Cadian, yes.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure he got killed by Abaddon, didn't he?
He did, but I suppose he got better.
And then Creed got zapped by a Necron warrior, and he
got put in the
Tesseract
in the museum, didn't he?
Thing, yeah. So it's not looking too good for Cadian characters at the moment. You're down to 1 in the lore. But yeah, that's all the actual characters that I can see. Everything else is either regiment specific, as in Catachan ones, or agnostic in terms of what your new guys that we've got, your Gaunt's Ghosts. Although they actually do have a regiment, but they operate as if they don't. So they can go in any army.
But Pask is pretty flipping popular.
Yes, because he's the really good tank commander, and I love
which is the really good data sheet for Guard in the general sense. He is the bestest version of the bestest thing.
Yes, and obviously he's a different one, so you could have 3 tank commanders plus Pask if you want to go for lots of 3+ shooting on your tanks.
Doesn't he get 2+ shooting?
Well, I suspect he does, actually.
I think that's what's good about him. But anyway, the point is you get warlord traits, you get relics, you get some extra stratagems, and these will add to and or affect Cadia units, which include those 3 characters that we mentioned earlier, as well as obviously every other Cadia related thing that you're going to run. So Phil is finally searching for some last little bits of information that relate to the conversation we just had.
This is Pask. He is a 2+, indeed, on his top profile. I did
check him out.
Yeah.
What a boy. Anyway, so we got 3 warlord traits. Phil, tell us what the first one is.
Steel Discipline. It's an aura ability. While a friendly Cadian unit is performing an action within 6 inches of this model, that unit can shoot without that action failing.
Incredible.
I actually don't think it's that good.
Oh, really?
Well, if you're playing with a lot of infantry, who cares? It's like your infantry has las guns. Well, there are some combos where you suddenly go, well, they could suddenly be really good. But for the most part, infantry are 10 a penny, and you can quite easily sacrifice 1 to not be shooting for a turn, especially if it's, somewhere on the board that isn't important. However, when it comes to other units that are a bit more important and also doing an action, obviously my initial thought was things like Scions, but Scions aren't Cadian, so forget about that. But forget about your Ogryns as well. Forget about that. Maybe your vehicles are running all over the place for whatever reason. even though
Yeah, but
really
you could be
want
looking at
them to
heavy weapons teams. You could be looking at
you've got
Yeah.
veterans, command squads. You've got some interesting stuff, but mostly you've got your infantry squad, and in this respect, you're going to have your conscripts as well, your white shields, which is what a lot of the theme of this book seems to be geared towards. And maybe you'll have your 20 to 30 man squads of infantry / conscripts running around, doing actions, being on objectives, and also, still shooting. In that case, it suddenly becomes really good. For a standard 10-man squad, I think they're a bit ten a penny, especially if they've not got any special weapons in them or heavy weapons, for example. Then maybe this isn't the best of the three.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, you raise a really interesting point. And again, I think, that speaks to your experience as a general in the worlds of Astra Militarum, because I immediately think, oh, that's useful, because it's useful in a lot of other context. But obviously, in the case of the Astra Militarum,
if you're a Space Marine, this is damn good.
Yes, very much so. But yes, I do take that on board. All right, fine. So the second of the Warlord traits is Gifted Commander, which I assume means that this is clearly going to be the best of them because it has such a emboldening title.
Exactly.
Here we go.
It's Secret Santa for your generals. He gets to give out gifts.
All right, well, here we go. Let me try and explain that in more detail. After both players have deployed their armies, but before the first battle round begins, select either one Cadian vehicle, which has to not be a Titanic unit, by the way, from your army that is in your deployment zone, or up to 3 non-vehicle Cadian units from your army that are in your deployment zone, and redeploy them. If the mission is using strategic reserve rules, any of those units can be placed into strategic reserves without having to spend any additional command points, regardless of how many units are already in strategic reserves. If both players have abilities that redeploy units, roll off, the winner chooses who redeploys their units first. So, can be handy because you can essentially chuck a bunch of units in strategic reserves that might otherwise cost you a bucket load of CP to do so. So, in that regard, it's pretty cool. And being able to redeploy is pretty handy. But in the case of the Guard, moving 3 non-vehicle units around or 1 vehicle unit around, it's probably not that impactful. But it's pretty good still.
I think it's really good. It's something that most armies have, and I've been saying for ages, why can't Guard get this? And now Guard have got it, only if you're Cadian. So some of this will be me bitter that Krieg don't get access to this. Maybe I need to start suddenly pretending they're Cadians all of a sudden. But I think it's got some good potential because, one, you can be super aggressive. You can put 3 tanks right out in line of sight, so they could be shot at if you didn't get the roll-off to go first. And once you realise you've lost the roll-off, you can suddenly hide them away. But you can also bait your opponent into deploying his units in a certain way as well. I think one of the good reasons for this is as well, you could keep a vehicle alive. So tank commanders are super good at the moment. The hotness is still demolisher tanks because they've just got insane firepower, but they've got very short range. So being able to stick one of those in reserve for free is really handy. And then when they do come on, they're coming on under half their range or within range of their 24-inch weapon because it's a very short-ranged demolisher cannon. So being able to do that sort of for free is quite good. Your normal free units maybe not as useful to put into reserve, but a good way of it, because the thing is you could use it to like slingshot units like your infantry up the board or special weapon teams or veteran teams. But infantry, because of orders such as move, are so good you can just sort of slingshot them up the board via that method anyway. And then here's the question as well. So we're reading this pre a new Codex, and we have this issue with the Freeblade Regiment one as well. It's like this is a good buff for Guard before they get their Codex, but how will this compare with the Codex once it finally comes out? So you might go, yeah, infantry don't need this because they get move, but they might not have that order come the new Codex because it is relatively seen as being too good, because it is a really good ability to double move, basically.
No, totally.
So yeah, it's hard to, you can look at this now, and I presume it's built for now rather than to also still work after a new codex, but hopefully it would as well to a more or lesser extent. But yeah,
I get the vibe that these supplements are intended to still work for whatever is to come in the future.
Yeah,
I think they are
so.
built with that in mind.
Yeah, we'll get onto that when we get to some of the relics as well, because you could go, is this going to be good even if this stuff got better later on? We'll talk about it when we get to it. But overall, Absolutely. I think this is a pretty good one.
Oh, it's a strong all-rounder. I definitely think there's value to it. Absolutely. What's the last one then, Phil?
It's Mind Like a Fortress. It's an aura ability. While a friendly Cadian unit is within 6 inches of this model, in the enemy psychic phase, each time a model in that unit would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, roll a d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. Rubbish. I mean, it's
not without its uses,
it's situational. It's if you're going up against Thousand Suns, Grey Knights, or maybe even Elder, where there's lots of psychic stuff, and you're gonna expect lots of mortal wounds. It's okay, but I like, as we say all the time, I like all-comer lists. I want something very generic, and when you look at it from a tournament perspective, I don't think you would ever take this, because the gifted commander is so much more utilitarian. Not utilitarian. It's got more utility in terms of what you can do with your army. Whereas this, 4 out of 5 games in a tournament, for example, you won't come up against anything that's going to really affect this. You'd be better off just taking Cluxus Assassin if you were that worried about Psychics, for example.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the instances where it's useful, obviously it is very useful, because being able to shrug mortal wounds on a 5+ for a unit such as Guardsmen can be very frustrating, because obviously they're so numerous.
Vehicles, for example. Because that's one easy way of doing damage to them.
Yeah. But they're so numerous that it could be useful. But again,
I think
it's very unlikely you're going to take it.
I think the fact it's limited to an aura ability makes it almost too niche to be practical, even in a gaming point of view.
Yeah. Agreed. But an interesting choice all the same. So we get on to relics. So there's a whole heap of extra relics. The first of these relics is Dakur's Auto Vox Servo Skull. So an infantry officer only. Each time the bearer uses Voice of Command ability, which is the ability which enables you to issue orders.
Correct.
You can extend the range of the orders by 12 inches.
Yeah, it's normally
so
6
the range
inches.
is normally 6. So essentially you've doubled that range. And if the bearer is within 3 of a friendly unit with a Voxcaster, you can exchange the range of orders to 72 if the target unit also contains a Voxcaster. Which, noting with the way that 40k is played today, a 72-inch range is utterly redundant.
It's basically the table.
Yes, well, it's more than the table. It's ridiculous. Like the necessity for that is crazy. But if you are one of those people who still plays on a 6x4, or you are the sort of person who plays apocalypse games, then great. But I don't know. I think obviously extending the range of your orders to 12 has some viability, but overall, I wouldn't say that I'm utterly impressed with that as a relic. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Phil?
Well,
you use the guard more than I do.
I did, and I mean, take a drink, everyone. I'm going to recount you with a tale of me going to No Retreat. So when I last went to No Retreat, I took a very infantry-ish heavy list, and I gave every squad that could have them Voxcasters, and I tried to play using orders. I gave my main officer the ability with laurels of command to reissue an extra order, or issue an extra order on a 4+ to the same squad, an extra order. And then I think I also, because you had senior officers, so you could do 2 orders anyway. So I made sure I could get lots of orders all the way around. And even with that, I sort of struggled with the range, because the Voxcast is normally only 18 inches, if I recall correctly. So it's a bit of a struggle to get him around, and he's obviously still tied to a unit. You know, he's got to be within 3 inches or within 6 inches to just do a standard order, which I found really limiting. And it made me kind of go, do I even want to bother with Voxcasters for that reason? Would I just be better off taking a handful more officers that can, you know, just babysit a squad, for example? This, you know, part of me is like, Voxcasters should just have a longer range anyway, like than 18
Agreed.
inches. Like it should really be 72 inches, to be honest. Like it's a radio. There shouldn't be really a range on the table that it can't reach. Obviously, there's practical, you know, gameplay considerations to take into effect. So part of me, this is sort of feels a bit disappointing, because maybe they're not really going to fix Voxcasters for the future Codex. But assuming that's not really the case in terms of how these are built, maybe Voxcast is going to go to like 24 inches, which would make them a bit more practical. Yeah, I think that it's...
I think that's very likely, though, based on the fact that they've communicated here that they want to increase the range to 72 inches with a Voxcaster.
Which is crazy high.
Yeah, massive. That's a huge percentage increase. So if you were to assert that a standard order had 6-inch range, but a Voxcast had maybe 36-inch range, well, then all of a sudden the 72 makes sense in the you know, based on the logic that you've doubled both numbers.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a hint there that they could be moving to a 36-inch range.
Possibly, because it would make them more useful. And I think if you are going to go down that kind of infantry order heavy kind of army, then this would be a bit of a no-brainer, because it gives you a bit more flexibility. Because there were times when I was dropping in units, because I was using lots of scions, I was sort of struggling with positioning of where my officers needed to go, because even that 18 inches wasn't really much to go by, whereas this is like, oh, okay, he can order anything on the board. Brilliant. And especially if you're going to go with your not white scars, your what we call white shields, that's the word. If you're going with them and lots of big units and giving them orders, for example, then yeah, you would get a lot of sort of decent benefits from having your Voxcasters around. And maybe you only need your one central character, because you're just ordering 1 or 2 big units around.
Nice.
So you could get away with it. Good
times. What's the next one, Phil?
The next one is Gatekeeper. It's a golden oldie that people sort of might remember from Vigilus. It's a model with a battle cannon only. It's a relic battle cannon, everyone. It replaces the old battle cannon and gives you the Gatekeeper, which is basically a cannon that used to be on the gates of Cadia and is now on a tank. So that's cool modelling potential. Range 72 inches, as is standard for a battle cannon. Type heavy D6, as is standard for a battle cannon. It's strength 8 -2, but instead of D3 damage, it is flat 3, which is exactly like the old relic battle cannon, which was phenomenally good. But you also get an addition. It has blast, as is standard, but each time an attack is made with this weapon against a chaos unit, add 1 to the attack's wound roll. That makes it even tastier. A tastier taste on top of a taste.
All the flavors. No, I mean, look, I was a bit of a naysayer of the damage-free battle cannon until me and Phil did a double event back in, crikey, 2019. And I saw firsthand the potent power of the damage-free battle cannon.
Exactly. So it can mop up like the super absorbent sponge that you would see on a QVC channel.
Absolutely. Old, what was the name of that guy that would come out and do the one sheet thing? He had a name, didn't he? It was like this strange, almost like Spanish stereotype or whatever. I can't remember.
I know what you mean, but
it only takes one sheet. One sheet.
Yes,
I can't remember his name.
I can't remember what it was. Anyway,
so long ago.
So again, this is a thing of, I was really hoping battle cannons were becoming flat free anyway, because the Chaos battle cannon in the Death Guard book became flat free. So maybe all you're getting from here, as it post new Codex, is +1 to wound roll, which isn't that great. But if it is still D3, then you're getting flat free plus the ability to get extra 1 to wound against Chaos. Super good. I mean, if I was If I was a Cadian player, this is an auto include, like hands down.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It was always an auto include in Vigilus. It will be again this time round.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. People used to specifically take that detachment to unlock this option. So the fact that it is a just Cadian specific thing is quite cool. So the next of the relics is called Bastion's Sword. Is that right? What am I saying here?
Well, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
We'll go with that. Models with Power Sword only. This relic replaces Power Sword. The bearer has the following ability: Bastion's Example Aura. While friendly Cadian infantry units are within 6 of the bearer, each time a combat attrition test is taken for that unit, you can ignore any or all modifiers. Phil loves this rule. That's why he plays Krieg exclusively.
Exactly.
He's a big fan of.
Exactly.
He
gets to become a Kriegsman, and all around him get to become a Kriegsman. Lovely.
That's true. Additionally, he has a power sword, which is essentially like a master-crafted power sword, except it is +2 strength and damage too. So it is +2 strength, -3, 2 damage, which essentially means that for most guardsmen, they're going to be strength 5, which is pretty meaningful. So actually, pretty good option for your army.
Yeah, it's a nice one. It's because normally the kind of close combat ones, bar the flaming sword for Space Marines, are all rubbish. Like they're all okay, but not really that great. And again, it is on a standard officer of some kind, so he's probably going to die in combat quite easily. But at the same time, it is pretty good while he's around.
Yeah, totally. I think again, having a power sword that grants an aura is pretty cool. So I know I like that. I think that's pretty wicked. What's the last one, Phil?
It's Tactica Pax Cadia, officer only, once per battle round. When you use a battle tactic or strategic ploy stratagem that requires you to select a Cadian unit, if that unit is within 6 inches of this model can use this relic, provided that it has not used it for that stratagem already during this battle. You lost already, Dan, because I am. If it does, that stratagem costs 1 fewer CP to a minimum of 0. Note that this CP cost only reduces by 1 CP for that use of a stratagem. Any future uses are cost as normal. So basically, battle tactics or strategic ploy stratagems, if you apply it to a unit within 6 inches of this guy, you can basically say that the relic is being used instead and reduce the cost of that stratagem by 1. And then you can only apply this relic to a stratagem once per battle.
Well, there you go. You're going to have to break out the FAQ and remind yourself what is a battle tactic stratagem in the confines of...
Well, luckily, the next page has some stratagems, which has some battle tactics and some... Was it strategic ploys, I believe? Yeah, strategic ploys.
But I'm saying for the existing range of Astra Militara
yes,
ones,
I mean, I've got no clue. I would have to have a look, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, confusing,
may as well.
But it's nice to see that the actual groupings of stratagems are starting to have an actual game purpose and not just, a colouring.
Exactly. It's finally coming around. All right. Typically, we would only do 1 stratagem from each colour, but there's only 7 of them, so we're going to do them all because Cadia stands for 1 CP. Battle tactic stratagem. Use the stratagem in any phase when a Cadian infantry unit from your army is selected as the target of an attack. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack is made against that unit, an unmodified wound roll of 1 or 2 for that attack fails, irrespective of any ability that the weapon or the model making the attack may have. If the attack has a damage characteristic of 1, add 1 to any armor saving throw made against the attack. That is a pretty darn good stratagem for 1 CP.
Yeah, I mean, the not being wounded on 1s and 2s, it might be used by some heavy weapons, battle cannons, for example.
Yeah.
Because basically you need to be strength 6 or more to wound on 2s.
Absolutely.
But the +1 again to save for damage 1 weapons is huge. You can combo that with take cover, which gives you +1 to your save. You could combo it with the psychic power to give you +1 to your save as well. So there's plenty of ways where you can give yourself +3 to your save, or just be in cover as well, which is an additional +1. So there's plenty of ways where you can, that's +4 if you were really trying hard.
I think the thing with this is, and why I think this is actually quite usable, is there is a relative abundance of strength 6 mass shot guns, especially those which are damage 1. I mean, when you look at like the Elder range, for example, the Shuriken cannon, the scatter laser, there's a real abundance of strength 6 multi-shot weapons out there, which is, prime for murking guardsmen on 2+. But being able to remove that benefit, turning that into a 3+ to wound, is actually really damaging to the efficiency of those weapons. So yeah, I think that's really, really good. And obviously adding 1 to your armor saves as well, taking you from a 4-up armor save to a 3-up armor save, or a 5-up to a 4-up, is pretty reasonable, especially when you add in all the multipliers that Phil has already outlined. So no, I really rate it. I think it's good.
The perfect defense against a multi-laser, that super common weapon of the Imperium.
Absolutely. Or as I say, scatter laser is like that, but better.
I do sort of feel like the multi-laser was meant to be a thing, and then it's just sort of been so underutilized. They need to really bring it back.
They need to bring that back. Tell us about the next one, Phil.
So shock troops, 1 CP or 2 CP. It is a battle tactic, so you can get your discount with your relic. Use a stratagem in your movement phase when a Cadian unit from your army makes a normal move until the end of that turn. Point 1. The unit is considered to have remained stationary. So as Cadians, remaining stationary means you get to reroll 1s to your hit roll. So that's basically what it's allowing you to do. Move and get reroll 1s to hit. Each time a ranged attack made by this model in a unit targets a unit within half range, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. If you use this on an infantry unit, it costs 1 CP. Otherwise, it costs 2 CP. This one has some cool combos. I like this one a lot.
Can you give us some examples of the cool combos?
So, Tank Commander, you've given it, I can't remember what it's called, you've given it a tank ace, so you make your Punisher tank -1 AP already. You make it -1 AP. You can suddenly move it 10 inches, play 2 CP, pay 2 CP. You can remain stationary, so you can now double shoot after moving 10 inches. Your Punisher cannon, it's got range of 24 inches. Maybe you've moved it 10 inches and it's now suddenly within half range. So now all of a sudden you've got a -2, an AP -2 Punisher cannon doing 40 shots. That is incredibly good. You take the junk gun of the Lehman Russ tank and make it dead good. And obviously there's other sort of like wombo combos you could do, but I mean that was just the initial one that sprung to mind, because the Punisher cannon is really good but lacks any kind of AP, which makes it rubbish. So making it AP -1 at any time if you're within half range is really good. Comboing it with a tank ace to make it -2 makes it crazy good. Obviously you could use your gifted commander, so you can come in from half range off the board, for example, which normally I believe you count as moving full. I don't know what the wording is when you come in from strategic reserve, though, if you count as having done a normal move, which I believe is what it would be, or just having moved your full move. So if you can come in from reserve, you've done your full movement, but then you play this to actually still count as being stationary, so you can shoot twice, you've come in within half range, you're getting your reroll 1s to hit, which you could have done through orders if you're a tank commander anyway. But also giving yourself an extra AP, I think is crazy good. That also works on, imagine you do this on a super heavy tank. You've got a Baneblade loaded with heavy bolters.
Christ.
All of a sudden you've given everything an extra AP.
Well, yeah, you take the Storm Sword. That would be hilarious, wouldn't it?
You're talking about the Storm Lord?
Oh, Storm Lord. Yes. Yeah. The one with
all the shots.
Twin mega bolter thingamabib. Yeah, there's some real real tasty option. For 2 CP, that's massive.
Yeah.
He's
it
looking
really
up.
is.
Is it the Storm Sword, the Storm Lord?
They're all things. Storm Lord is the one with the big gun. Hold on. Vulcan Mega Bolter. It's already -2, but making that -3. Strength 6, -2, 2 damage. Heavy 20. It's got a 60-inch range. So making that -3. Oh my god, that is a lot of dead Marines.
Yes, and then a bunch of heavy bolters on there as well.
Yeah.
That's doing some serious work.
Or heavy flamers. I mean, but that's only 12-inch range. So, I mean, in combat,
Yeah.
that would do a lot of work because then they would be
But
within
even then, though,
range.
just heavy bolters. Woof.
I mean, but also, so again, let's think about your white shields, and we're going to talk about white shields a bit more when we get that stratagem. But they come in units of 20 to 30. Imagine your las guns all of a sudden for 1 CP, 30 infantry. You're within half range, so you're doing double shots. You could actually be doing 40 shot, not 40 shots. You can give them an order to do rapid fire 2. So your 30 guys are doing what, 90 shots?
Yeah.
AP -1. Pretty good.
No, that's pretty tasty.
If you've got lows of command and
It's
you're
odd.
on
It is odd to
you
me.
could give them 2 orders.
It is odd to me that they have allowed vehicles to benefit from this as well, though.
Well, it costs you 2.
I would have assumed it was just infantry only, but yeah, the vehicle benefits are massive on this.
Yeah, like because that's immediately where I went to because I like my tanks. But yeah, I was like, oh yeah.
What's it like if you shoot the Death Strike missile?
I don't think it really works with that because the Death Strike missile mostly does mortal wounds, I believe.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean obviously Manticores, like the
Manticores wouldn't be bad with this.
Yeah.
Wyverns, all sorts.
Well, because here's the thing. So I mean, so you take this, but you combo it with the Tactica Pact Cadia, so you can reduce the CP cost. So yeah, you're doing it on a vehicle, but you can only do it once, but you're reducing the cost by 1. So that might be quite useful.
Yeah, very useful. No, I like it. That's a strong stratagem, that is. Well done, them. All right, next one. Field Promotion. Clue's going to be in the name, but we're going to read it anyway. 1 CP. Epic D stratagem. Use this stratagem when a Cadian warlord from your army is destroyed. Select a Cadian officer model from your army that does not have a warlord trait. Then select a warlord trait that no model in your army has and that the selected model is eligible for. Until the end of the battle, that model gains that warlord trait and for all rules purposes now counts as your warlord. In addition, if that model has the voice of command ability, until the end of the battle, it gains the senior officer ability. See company commander datasheet in Astra Militarum. If any mission objective, secondary objective, tactical objective, or agenda rules are triggered when your warlord is destroyed, those rules are not triggered until after the new warlord is destroyed. It's a great stratagem.
That's all right. Yeah, so the senior officer allows you to do an extra order. I think the interesting one I saw someone ask a question of, so Old Grudges is a warlord trait, and it's basically at the beginning of the battle you select, or before the battle starts, you select a unit, and everything within 6 inches can reroll all failed wound rolls against it, which is super good. Technically, I guess you can't use it because, yes, you can give a promoted officer the warlord trait, but technically you can't give it you can't actually select the unit for it to trigger. Now that's might really need an FAQ just to clarify. Actually, as soon as he gets it, he can select a unit, because that would be really useful, because in theory you could actually then get Old Grudges twice on your first officer. He's dead, you select your second officer, there's no other officer with it, so he can now have it as well, which would be...
Well, no, because you can't select Old Grudges twice, because it specifically says in your army that no. So technically, Old Grudges was in your army, so you can't just select it
is it in your army if he's dead though? It's in your army list, yes. But so I think, didn't they clarify about how things work with Well, I was thinking about assassins and doctrines, but they've completely reworded how those work. I think there was some times where if a unit is breaking a detachment rule, for example, your super doctrines. So you say you got Space Marines and you got a detachment of guard or a unit of guardsmen. As soon as those guardsmen die, surely you now unlock your super doctrine, or do you not? Because it was at that point at the start.
I would say that it was at the point of mustering your army. It's like just because a portion of your army is dead before the other bits doesn't affect the fact that you didn't get it.
There might be a rare rule that sort of explains.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't mind the idea of someone doubling up and maintaining the same warlord trait, but I think in the case of Old Grudges, it's complicated because there's too many variables in it. So I'd say in that instance, I think we should probably just stay away from that one. But in other instances, I think fair enough if that's what people want to do. But I would certainly interpret it as I've asserted there, which is if it's already on your army list, you shouldn't, in theory, then add it into your army.
I think that's a fairer way to play it. To go, you're meant to be having a brand new warlord trait, not just repeating the one the previous officer.
Yeah, ideally. But I mean, again, we'll see what they come up with when they FAQ it, should they choose to. Yeah, cool. But no, again, great strat for 1 CP. Really, really good. Definitely adds a lot of interesting viability into the... Well, not viability, but just adds flexibility, which I think is very valuable.
Yeah.
Tell us about the next one, Phil.
Sanctioned Psyker is a requisition stratagem, costs 1 CP. Use a stratagem before the battle when you're mustering your army. Select one Primaris Psyker unit, who's a character, or a Riverdan Psykers unit from your army, which is a unit of Psykers. That unit gains the Cadia faction keyword and can benefit from the regiment doctrine, but can never have a warlord trait. Which I guess is sort of useful. It's mostly useful for the next part. Add 1 to deny the witch tests for that unit, which is okay. Plus, the unit gains the following psychic action as described in the core rulebook. Telepathic order. So this unit can attempt this psychic action. If the psychic action is successful until the end of the turn, the unit gains the voice of command ability, and in your shooting phase can issue 1 order to 1 Cadian infantry unit within 18 inches of this unit. That's why it gains the Cadian keyword, because they need to have the same keyword when issuing orders. You can, although it technically doesn't, because Yarrick can issue orders to anyone because he doesn't have a regiment keyword, and that was quite specific, but maybe they're going to iron out that wrinkle, for example. Anyway, you can only use this stratagem once unless you're playing a Strike Force game, which is smaller battles, in which case you can use it. Oh, sorry, Strike Force is normal size, in which case you can use it twice, or in Onslaught battles, which is the super big size, you can use it 3 times. I think it's a bit rubbish because you've probably got enough officers and orders going around. However, and you'd want your psychers to be doing other things. However, it's like a replacement for a Voxcaster, I guess. It's a guaranteed 18-inch range. So it's sort of useful, but I personally can't see any use for it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. It just seems like a faff of a thing. It's like, and also to just give orders, admittedly with an increased range, but like,
I mean, it's an expensive unit to an extent. So what? Yeah, it just seems a bit odd. Like, to me, I would. The only reason why I could see it is you want maybe if you want lots of tank commanders, so you don't really want to spend much on HQ slots, for example, to give orders to people. So therefore you're short on orders, but you're doing a relatively infantry heavy army in addition to all your tank commanders. So therefore you might go, oh, I could take 2 of these guys for 2 CP and I can do orders. It's warp charge force, so it's quite easy to go off, although it can be denied, which is a real downside to this. But yeah, then it gives you 2 extra orders. So yeah, I don't see much use for it, but I'm sure there are some sort of plays where it might be useful.
All right. Next one.
Oh, you got the good
White
one.
Shields. Have I got the good one?
Yeah.
So it costs anything between 1 and 3 CP based on a bunch of variables, which we'll get into. It is a requisition stratagem. And use the stratagem before the battle when you are mustering your armies or your army. If your warlord has the Cadian keyword, select one Cadian detachment from your army. All Cadian conscripts units in your detachment gain the White Shield's keywords, have a leadership characteristic of 6. Ooh, leadership 6. Fancy, fancy. And lose their raw recruits ability. That's pretty good. If that detachment contains 2 or fewer conscript units, this stratagem costs 1 CP. If it contains 3 or 4 conscript units, it costs 2 CP. And if it contains 5 or more conscript units, it costs 3 CP. If you are using the specialist reinforcement requisitions to upgrade a unit in your crusade force with this stratagem, it will only upgrade a single unit of Cadian conscripts from your army each time it is used. Fine. Remind us, Phil, raw recruit, what is it and what do you benefit from when you ain't got it anymore?
So raw recruits, each time you issue an order to the unit, on a 4+, it goes off. Otherwise, it doesn't. This harks back to the very earliest of 8th edition, where you could take conscripts. They could all be issued orders willy-nilly, and they would be just as good as infantry. And at the time, the holy grail of the commissars, when you failed morale, a nearby commissar would just kill one model and you would auto pass the morale. That doesn't happen anymore. I would love that to come back. But basically, this removes the main issue with conscripts, which was the inability to reliably give them orders. So now you can just give them orders. There's no chance that they're going to fail. Happy days. Also, your leadership is 4 normally, so it goes up to 6. Still not great, but it's better than what it was before. So this, and especially when you've got squads of 20 to 30. But again, as we said before, with the shock tactic, for example, where you can improve the AP, you've suddenly got units of 20 to 30 guys. Give them orders to rapid fire. So 30 guys in half range is doing 90 shots with AP -1 all of a sudden. That's crazy. That's bonkers. Yeah. This makes this crazy good. And for 3 CP, you can upgrade 5 units or more. So as many as you could have a whole army of infantry. I imagine you'll see this get a lot of play because it's a bit busted, it seems. Which is why you might go, oh my god, I need all the orders under the sun, which is maybe when you go, I've run out of officers, let's take some sanctioned psychers, just to give these mad size squads literally on baking trays that you're shoveling around the tables to do your stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredible. I mean, obviously, for those players who want to go through the process of building and painting and fielding hordes of conscripts, then, fair play to you. This is your moment in the sun.
True. I will note your conscripts are weapon skill, ballistic skill 5+. So that's the real downside of them. So their weapon skill isn't as good. How many points are they per model, though? 5 points a model. Nothing. So I think they are actually the same points as regular infantry, which is why people are like, why would you take them? They're worse. And you didn't, but now you possibly will, because you can just take lots of them. They're also troops, so they're OBSEC as well. That's something to bear in mind when we get to another stratagem later on in this book.
Well, indeed. On that topic then, Phil, let's get the next one from you, mate.
So load, fire, reload, 1 CP. Use a stratagem in your shooting phase when a Cadian vehicle unit from your army is selected to shoot. Select 1 enemy unit until the end of the phase. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack with a weapon that has the blast ability against the enemy target. On an unmodified roll of a 6, the attack inflicts 1 additional hit. The attack inflicts 2 additional hits instead if the target is a monster or a vehicle. That's not bad. If a hit is scored on the attack, then the unit at the start of your next turn, until the start of your next turn, can't fire Overwatch or set to defend. So if you put that on a vehicle that's got the relic battle cannon, for example, you're going to do a lot of damage, especially since you're against vehicles. And if you're against vehicles, you're you're probably going to use the was a Hail of Fire stratagem. So that's 2 CP against a vehicle. You get maximum number of shots, so you can do all of a sudden 12 shots by default. So you're going to reliably get a couple of 6s, which gives you not 1 but 2 extra hits. So that's going to murder stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good for 1 CP.
Very good for 1 CP, yeah.
I mean, and there's some sort of fun play in it as well, in terms of just using it to shoot at a unit. Like, so for example, you could just be like, I'm just going to use a Basilisk or Manticore to shoot at a unit just to deny you Overwatch for my important unit of Krieg Death Riders that's a separate detachment that's going to come in because the Death Riders are kind of good. Or more likely your Bullgrins, because that's what every Cadian Guard player will have. So if they're going to charge into something, you're going to be like, cool, I'll just deny you Overwatch. Doesn't really matter if I kill your stuff, but if I do, that's a bonus.
No, I hear what you're saying, mate. I mean, I think, being able to turn off Overwatch is good. I think it works better when it's on, certain styles of assault units. And I think turning off Overwatch is not as powerful today as it was in 8th edition.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's still pretty reasonable. All right, the last of the stratagems: never give up, never surrender. 2 command points. Strategic ploy stratagem. Use the stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select 1 Cadian unit from your army that is within range of an objective marker on the battlefield until the start of your movement phase. That unit has objective secure ability. If a model in such a unit already has this ability, that model counts as 1 additional model when determining control of an objective marker. Each vehicle model in such a unit counts as 5 models when determining control of an objective marker. And you add 1 to any combat attrition test taken for that unit. So there you go. That's what that does. So it makes them crazy obseccy, basically.
Yeah. So I really like it. It's expensive, but
2 CP, but it's more or less. I mean, if
you've got your white shields, for example, your 20 men, all of a sudden they're already obsec, so now your 20 men become 40 men in terms of, you can't even get that many on the objective, I imagine. However, the vehicle one's cool. And again, something I've said they should just have by default. This shouldn't be a stratagem.
I agree.
This is something vehicles should just have to make vehicles scary. So it works, most vehicles aren't in squads. So, for example, your Lehman Russ, it would just work on 1. That's cool. You can make Lehman Russ tanks obsec anyway via a spearhead detachment. So technically you could double them to 10 if you did it that kind of combo. However, it feels like it works really well with Sentinel units because they are units. So you could have 3 of them count as 15 models that are also obsec. That's crazy good. Scout Sentinels, for example, will just be really sticky and hard to shift. I think you've got a lot of utility around that. Again, with the white shields, you're probably getting the benefit of the combat attrition test, more useful than the actual obsec stuff. And you can also combo it with the what was it? The sword that allows you to ignore combat modifiers, because you can ignore any or all. So, for example, you could ignore the negative modifiers of combat attrition, but then give yourself +1. Especially if you've got, your big 30-man squads, that's probably a good combo that you might want to do, because you are going to fail your leadership, I think. And there's, beyond the, so there's 2 stratagems that you could do. So you've got your generic core book stratagem where you auto pass, but you can only do that once per game. You've got I think it's 1 CP for guard, and rather than doing D6, you do D3. So you kind of half your leadership test. But with big 20, 30-man squads, you're almost guaranteed to fail it if you've taken enough casualties. So you need to then look at how do you mitigate your combat attrition test. Like, you can't outright ignore the test, but you can definitely loosen its effect, especially if you're under half. which is when you're getting an additional +1, -1 to your test.
Mm.
So that is quite useful, I think. But yeah, I think Scout Sentinels, which they are, I think there's a couple of really cool stratagems in Psychic Awakening that makes them more resistant to damage and stuff, so they could be quite sticky on the tabletop. So having them running around and being obset could be quite an annoyance to your opponent.
Yeah, it really would be annoying. And I do think that this range of abilities adds a lot of durability and also a lot of really good options to what was essentially already a popular guard regiment. So I can definitely see a lot of people excited to add these options to their guard armies if they are so inclined to, collect an army that can operate as a Cadian army. But yeah, no, genuinely, I think it's a nice set. Look, can I say for a minute that this has made or will make the Astra Militarum a top tier army list?
No, of course not. No.
No.
I think this is a problem. It's like a band-aid on a hemorrhaging head wound. It's like, it's not going to help. It's
No.
because of the fundamental flaws of the Guard Codex is they're kind of too expensive in comparison to the newer units like Guards, like Sisters, Admech Drakari, for example. They can have equally way more models on the table than a Guard player can have, and they're just better at what they do. It's like Guard need to be dirt cheap, really, to be viable in the kind of current sort of amount of models in the current meta. But also the rules just aren't that good either. So it's helpful. It definitely, in isolation, this is, I think, really good. Like, you go, if the Guard Codex was good, or you take that as a baseline, this is really nice. Lots of flavorful additions. It makes Cadian a lot better. But overall, yeah, Cadian are so far down the bottom of the league table, I guess, in terms of where Guard is anyway. It's not really going to help too well. It will help, but just won't help much, I don't think. But if you're an outright Guard player, yeah, this is the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with it. It's like, yeah, Guard are just fundamentally not equipped to function in 9th edition as it is played by the majority of people. I genuinely hope that Guard in the future gain more synergies with fortifications and other things that can, bolster their in-game usefulness. I think you should really have options to utilize trench networks and do things that really assist the Guard, because the idea that Guard are this dynamic, like elite army that jump around and do what everything else does in the game is just false. And I think the other thing that Guard desperately needs is secondaries that massively benefit that hunker down play style. I think it has to become more about denying territory, holding specific objectives, just holding ground in general. I think one of the things that would be really good for Guard when their codex eventually comes is that they're unique in the sense that they get to choose 2 secondaries from their book, and their book is much more built around standing in one place and shooting stuff than it is, what 40k is for everyone else, which is a very movement heavy game. And I think that's the problem with Guard. They don't play well in the movement phase, even with move. So yeah, I think there has to be more done to kind of recognize the foibles of the army and address it accordingly, in my opinion. I think Guard just need a lot of help right now. They need a codex. They and the Chaos Space Marines are just in a ridiculous state at the moment. They really, really, really need an update fast.
Yeah, I think when you see like tournament stats and stuff, they probably sit around anywhere between like 20.
I don't even care about tournament stats. I'm sorry, please finish.
I was going to say, in terms of like their win rates, it tends to sit around like 25, 30 odd %, which is crazy low. Admech Drakari tends to be around 60, which is crazy high. But yeah, they're pretty much always at the bottom of the pack in terms of playing.
I don't really care about their tournament stats. I just mean in general. I think, what young kid is going into a Games Workshop store and going, Daddy, I want the guard because I want to lose all the time. It's like, it's that thing where it's like the army list just doesn't work within the game that they've made. And again, some of the builds that make sense are very infantry heavy, as we've just talked about. The smaller boards make it impossible to do anything with that. You just end up with filling what little space you have.
Well, in a way, that's a good denier for anyone with deep strike reserves, for example. Literally, you're basically turning them into an orc horde army with that kind of white shield stratagem. But like, who wants to really shovel around 100+ models? Now, I know some guard players will be like, "That's how you play guard," but to me, that's just too much in one direction. Like, I would, I want a good 60+ troops. Like, 5 to 6 squads, I think, is a decent number. 80, that's a lot. But to me, I would rather have much more vehicle-heavy units, vehicle-heavy armies to sort of balance it out, because you kind of need that firepower.
You want the synergies, though, right? You want the guard army to be a really beautiful synergy of all elements of warfare. You want the entrenched positions. You want the vanguard-style armies or squadrons of aircraft and vehicles. You want that being expressed on the tabletop. You want it to be much more the sum of its parts, as opposed to being an elite thing or whatever. It's got to wear you down, but it's got to it feels to me like guard tanks need a massive upswing in terms of power, in terms of their damage output. It seems to me that that's the thing that guard should have, is it should have a few artillery pieces or a few vehicles, but those vehicles should really do a lot of work, and then the backbone of the guard is just the hoardy numbers. But again, it's how you realize that in game and how you kind of make that work. But I think that's the thing. I think I would love to see guard making more use of fortifications and having secondaries that benefit their playstyle, because the game has just ran away from them. And I think that's the problem for guard. It's like, even down to the fact that like a young person getting into the hobby, or even just an experienced player, is less enticed by the idea of collecting guard, because they're just a really unimaginative, uninspiring army, which is a shame, because it's one of the most, interesting ranges.
Well, yeah, I don't
doesn't
think
spark your imagination.
I don't know. I don't think they're necessarily uninspiring, but I think the rules, they're not competitive. They're not at the same power level, and there's a real kind of crux for certain units. Basically, everyone says if you want to play guard and do well with them, you've got to either take as many tank commanders as possible, or it's the full payload manticores, which is what everyone raves about, and that's literally like the two things that everyone says. And
Bulgrins.
Yeah, Bulgrins are pretty good still, and the people say take them. But it's just like, if you're building an army and it's like it has to have those things in it, it's like, well, that's not a fun army to play. So I don't own any Manticores. I don't own Manticores. I don't own Bulgrins. I don't particularly really want to own them either. And I should be able to play an army without them and still do well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the thing. And when I say they're uninspiring, I don't mean from a range perspective or people wanting to collect them perspective. But I think, I just mean from a gameplay perspective. I mean, people look around at the stuff and they go like, oh, what's my next project? And I think it takes a very specific type of person at the moment to be like, oh yeah, guard is what I want, because it's such a very specific way of playing. And even then, it's not even that good at it yet. And I think that's the problem. That's where my lack of inspiration
they have a real lack of rerolls and buffs and auras. And I don't necessarily mind that, because they've got orders. But it's like they have to play the numbers game. And it's like they can be crap, but they've got to have volume of shots, volume of hits, volume of bodies on the table. And they just don't have that in comparison to other
The
armies.
orcs.
Well, yeah, but
The orcs can outshoot and outdo them in every
well, like
element.
Sisters, Drakari, Admech can all have more models and vehicles on the table. They're tougher, they hit better in combat, they shoot better in the shooting phase. Some of them have got better psychic, and it's like, yeah, guards should easily be as numerous. Like they should have one of the biggest armies on the table, with maybe the exception of orcs running in like an orc horde style army. Otherwise, they should really be dominating the tabletop in terms of number of minis. And sort of they used to be the shooting army, and obviously Tau's more elite but shooty. But now Admech are like just so much better at shooting, but have more volume of shots than even the guard, which is sort of mad.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, man. Well, there we go. An interesting insight into the state of play of the guard. Who would have thought that we would talk extensively on that topic in an episode of Lookout, Sir? Although it has been a while, I feel. But yeah, all right, cool. Well, there you go. That's that bit done. Thank you very much for checking that bit out. We're going to move on now to whatever it is we decided to do next. Transitional noise. Woo! In this part of the podcast, we are going to talk about the rules found within Book 1, Rising Tide, Warzone Octarius, on page 60 and 61, Kill Team Strike Force, which is an army of renown for the Space Marine chapter known as the Deathwatch. And Phil, you know that I enjoy the odd bit of death watching now and again. I've flirted with the army over the years. Many a model has been bought, owned, and or, built. Even the odd little model has been painted here and there. Not that many, though, admittedly. So, yeah. But you too, Phil, have dabbled with the idea of being a Deathwatch man.
I am a Deathwatch voyeur. I will watch from afar, but I will not partake in the action. So far, I've yet to get the courage. I think I built I built a model, which I did as a test model when I was choosing my options between Minotaurs, Deathwatch, and Black Templars.
Nice.
And basically, I built them all, got halfway through painting the blacks on both the Black Templars and Deathwatch, and then I started painting the Minotaur one. I finished the Minotaur one, and I was like, brilliant, that's the one I like doing, so I'm going to do that one.
Awesome.
So I will one day go about doing a Deathwatch. I've always liked the idea of doing, Watchmaster, a squad or two, and a Corvus Blackstar, because I actually really like that flyer. And actually, having read the Kill Team Strike Force rules, this would be a perfect way of actually bringing that army to life as a kind of little detachment or army.
Absolutely. Although, you'd have to be playing it in smaller point games if you wanted to use it as an army, because your entire army needs to be this in order to run it. But no, and one of the things I found quite interesting about Watchmasters the other day, I was actually running some Deathwatch in some games recently, because as I said, I do actually own quite a lot of them. And I discovered through a weird thing that Watchmasters aren't captains, even though they do what captains do.
Yeah. It's weird because a bit like Black Templars, where they've got, is it marshals or high marshals?
No, because the marshal
replaces the captain.
Yeah. Or rather, the marshal is the captain data sheet with extra options. However, the Watchmaster is its own data sheet, and it doesn't have the captain or lieutenant keywords, is not referred to as such anywhere. Thus, bizarrely, should you want to do this, it appears that a Watchmaster and a captain can reside in the same detachment.
Which is odd, because it feels like having a captain is a complete, is it anathema to the concept of Deathwatch? Because it feels like the Watchmaster is the rank of captain. You would maybe have a captain, I can't really imagine this happening, but a captain from a chapter go to the Deathwatch, but he wouldn't be a captain.
No, they lose their rank, when they go over,
So
whatever they were before, they ain't no more.
Yeah, so it's a bit odd they don't have that stipulation within it. A bit like how Black Templars can't have librarians. It sort of feels like Deathwatch should have you can't take a captain. rule.
But you can, and oddly, you can take a captain and a watchmaster in the same detachment, unless I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. A big reason why I'm actually saying these words here on the pod is because I want someone to tell me I'm wrong, because otherwise I might continue to do it with reckless abandon and cheat my way into, the defamation of others.
Yes, to slow.
Although, is that something I would do? I'm suggesting they would do it towards me. Did that work?
Let's just say yes for the sake of argument.
Thank you. Anyway, there you go. So yeah, Deathwatch, really interesting force. Definitely one of the better Space Marine chapters. I'd say they're in the upper half of Space Marine chapters.
Yeah.
Potentially even the upper quadrant, whatever. The top 25% even. I'd say they're very good by Space Marine standards these days. Because they've got so many options, right, Phil?
Well, they do. Yeah, they've got sort of all the units. I think the ability to build your units in certain ways and allows you to get, outrider unit that has the infantry keyword and OBSEC.
Doesn't have the infantry keyword, has the mixed unit special rule, which allows them to behave like infantry when interacting with terrain.
Yes, yeah, effectively infantry keyword. In all but name.
In all but name, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is actually oddly, potentially better in some instances.
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly. But the point is that, Deathwatch are a really interesting army with a lot of flexibility and a lot of, viability in terms of the different types of builds you can do with them. And no more or nowhere else is that better kind of personified by the kill teams. So the thing that is unique about Deathwatch, noting that there are a great many things unique about the Deathwatch, but one of the things that is most unique about the Deathwatch is that they organize themselves into these groupings of warriors denoted as kill teams. And the idea of these kill teams, within lore anyway, these are groups of Space Marines comprised of, various chapters. Basically, much like the wall in Game of Thrones, Space Marines are assigned or volunteered or various other reasons placed within the ranks of the Deathwatch. And upon joining the Deathwatch, they effectively are now working within the infrastructure of the Deathwatch to go out and kill aliens. Because if you haven't already realized this, within the world of Warhammer 40,000, the Imperium of Man is not overly keen on aliens. So they have this specialized group of Space Marines known as Deathwatch that get together and like nothing more than going and stoving in the heads of the various forms of aliens that exist in the wider 40k universe. And typically they operate in these kill teams and are thrown out into the far reaches of the universe and go out there and slap about some Genestealer cult or go off arm wrestling with orcs. It's a lovely time being in the Deathwatch, typically speaking, I'm sure.
I'm sure it is. They're a bit like Starship Troopers, but beefed up.
Yes, absolutely. And in the case of obviously fielding Deathwatch as an army, the broad consensus seems to be that in the instances where the Deathwatch need to take to the battlefield as a full force, as an actual kind of, army, they effectively just get all these kill teams, pull them together and go, cool, we're an army now, off we trot. Seems to be the way it goes. Although obviously they still have access to dreadnoughts and vehicles and basically everything in Codex Space Marines. But they have these things called kill teams, and that's really where the flavor of the army comes in. Do you think we should mention what their chapter tactic is, Phil? It's probably worthwhile telling people what that is.
Yeah, sure. I'll let you go for it because I can't remember.
No worries. Well, it's really straightforward. Essentially, if you are a Battleforged Deathwatch army, you get two benefits. Benefit one, you pick a battlefield role, troop, HQ, elite, fast attack, etc. And from there on in, you are able to re-roll ones to wound against units that occupy that battlefield role. So if you have selected troops and you are shooting at a unit of Orc boys, you are re-rolling ones to wound those Orc boys because you have reroll 1s to wound against troops. Straightforward enough. The additional benefit that almost everyone forgets, because it's so rare that, well, it's not super rare, it's probably becoming more and more common, but it's quite often that you might forget this. You get reroll 1s to hit in combat against anything that is Xenos. So anything that is a Tyranid, a Necron, an Orc, you get to reroll 1s against them in combat. Because it's pretty solid. Because you really don't like those Xenos, devils. So you reroll 1s to hit against them, which is pretty reasonable. So that's their broader thing. Their super doctrine, as we broadly categorize the ability whereby they gain benefits from doctrines beyond what the doctrines normally grant, is odd because it isn't actually a super doctrine. It is more tactical flexibility. So they're unique in the sense that they don't have to follow the Devastator Tactical Assault Doctrine mandate. They can start in the Assault Doctrine as per their desire and then tilt into Tactical, then go back into Assault, and then maybe on turn 4 go into Devastator. It really depends on how you want to do it. The restrictions, though, are that you can't use any of those doctrines any more than you would be able to under normal circumstances. So you can only be in the Devastator Doctrine once, you can only be in the Tactical Doctrine twice, and you can only be in the Assault Doctrine 3 times. So you can't just go, I'm in the Assault Doctrine all game, because it just doesn't work that way.
That's quite clever.
Yeah, it's nice. It sort of illustrates their tactical flexibility, basically.
Yeah, and obviously when it comes to the kill teams, like how you build them themselves, there's a bunch of different types. Each one kind of gives you access to different units. So there's one that's more about Primaris Marines, so you can take an Intercessor, a Hellblaster, I would say like an Aggressor and an Inceptor, for example.
Oh no, so you're wrong about that, Phil. Now,
was
so
it
it's broken
changed?
down. Has changed.
Oh,
yeah, so it's
between
broken down
armors.
into armor types.
That's it.
So Firstborn are their own kill team. They're the most diverse kill team. But then otherwise it's a Phobos kill team, a Gravis kill team, and a whatever normal Primaris armor is called kill team.
Is it Tactica?
We'll go with that.
Something like
we'll
that.
go with that.
So
So in the case of the standard Primaris one, it's Intercessors, Hellblasters, Outriders. And I think that's it.
quite like
Am I thinking of
yeah,
anything
no, I was
else
thinking
in
of because Eradicators of Gravis, so that is probably
that is in the
it.
Gravis one, yeah.
Is I presume Blade Guard, are they in a kill team? Because they're
No, Blade Guard are in no kill teams at the
Okay.
moment. They haven't made their way into any kill teams.
it was interesting. I was looking at the kill teams earlier today, and if I'm not mistaken, so lore-wise, you would expect a couple of Intercessors, a couple of Hellblasters, a couple of maybe Outriders, and then that's your kill team. But normally what happens is everyone just spams one or two types. So the classic one that everyone does at the moment is I'm going to take half of them of Outriders, half of them of Intercessors, because I think you've got to always have a minimum number of Intercessors
Yeah, so
with your others.
yeah. So each kill team is based off of a kind of core element. So for the Firstborn one, it's Deathwatch Veterans. So you take Deathwatch Veterans, which are the standard power armored Deathwatch Space Marines. For the Primaris power armor variant, it's Intercessors. For the Phobos variant, it's the Infiltrators. And for the Gravis variant, it is the Heavy Intercessors. So those are like your core. So you have to have 5 from those core blocks, and then you get to sprinkle in the other elements.
Yeah, and it weirdly ends up being a bit spammy if you're going down that kind of competitive route. But I saw something today, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure when I was looking at the Eradicators, because you can obviously upgrade them or upgrade your weapons and stuff, and there didn't ever seem to be a limit like you would normally get. So a squad of Eradicators, you could upgrade one to be a multi-melter, but I think the wording on the kill team is you could upgrade all of them to have multi-melters. Which is
that's an interesting point. I don't actually know about that. I'll need to check that out. Normally, I think with the Eradicators, you're happy enough with their regular gun. But it's an interesting point.
So
Maybe you
what's
can just run
can you remember the name of their kill team? And I'll quickly look it up.
Fortis kill team, maybe.
think
Oh
that-
no, I think Fortis is the. I think the Fortis kill team is the standard Firstborn kill team. It might be... Oh, I really can't remember all the kill team names, Phil. I apologize. I was seeming so knowledgeable on the topic until it came to the whole, what are they called then? But what can you do, eh? But, well, Phil is looking for that, though. But yeah.
It's the Indomitor kill team is the one
There
with
you go.
aggressors, eradicators, and heavy intercessors.
So can you chuck a bunch of multi-melters in there? This is live list tailoring by Phil here. What I was going to say, though, Phil, just to expand on some of the points you were raising before, I do think that the attitudes are maturing on Deathwatch, certainly from the perspective of Deathwatch players. I think more and more people now are diversifying their selections within their kill teams and prioritizing big units over and above taking, 5 of something and then 5 of something else like the Outriders, and then just creating a 5-man Outrider squad. Because I think, people have come to a point where when the Deathwatch rules first came into existence, the expectation were that the 5-man units of Outriders were going to be really, really strong. But it actually turns out that they're not really that special, at least in my experience. So I'm noticing more and more that people are mixing up what they're bringing. So it's rare that you actually see people do the 5 Outriders. It's more likely that you'll see someone do the 5 Intercessors, a couple Hellblasters, and maybe 3 Outriders. Or maybe they'll do 3 Hellblasters and 2 Outriders, assuming they even look. Because bizarrely now, I'd say probably the most popular kill team on balance actually probably is the standard Firstborn one, just because of the war gear flexibility, the fact that you can put storm shields on it, the fact that you can add Terminators to it, the fact that you can have Thunderhammers all over the place, the fact that you can have Vanguard vets with lightning claws, the black shield that allows the unit to heroically intervene. There's so much amazing stuff you can do with the Firstborn unit.
It's the most diverse one of the lot, where they've sort of pigeonholed the others a little bit by the armor types, which isn't with the Firstborn one. But yeah, I've looked up the rules. It says any Eradicator can have their melter rifle replaced with one heavy melter rifle.
The heavy melter rifle. Yeah, that's fair play. Yeah,
but that's what you could do anyway. For some reason, maybe I misread that earlier, and I thought that's
fair enough, mate. It was good to explore, see if it was possible. But yeah, I think that's the thing with the kill teams. I think they're really cool. But one of the things that many people are aware of with kill teams, or maybe they're not, but one of the things that Deathwatch players were aware of with the kill teams is that kill teams have the ability to be given specialisms. So this kill team might excel at killing HQ units, or this kill team might excel at killing vehicles. And you basically can bring that to life in game by spending points to give them added benefits when fighting against those specific types of units. So effectively what you can do is you can make this unit efficient at killing vehicles, and then it always or heavy support, and it always re-rolls 1s when shooting at heavy support, irrespective of what the wider doctrine is. So if your army is prioritizing troops, but you've got a squad that specializes in shooting heavy support, you can always still re-roll 1s with that unit to wound on heavy support. And if the army-wide ability prioritizes heavy support, then the unit that would re-roll 1s on heavy support now re-roll everything. So it's a really, really good ability, but the problem was with it historically is that the specialism started to mount up the costs. If you had a few kill teams, say you had 4 kill teams in an army, you could be spending as much as 100 points on specialisms.
Yeah, because they range between 15 and 30 points.
Yeah. So not very many people were massively prioritizing the specialisms, but the specialisms are valuable, especially if you are considering, and this is the reason why I had to say all these words at the start, the kill team strike force, because the key thing here is that every one of your kill teams must have a specialism. That is one of the restrictions, basically. So a kill team strike force is an army of renown. And in terms of its restrictions, all units in your army must be Deathwatch, no doubt. But again, interesting that they have not stipulated anywhere in this about Imperial agents or unaligned units. You can't add an Imperial assassin to this and still run it. It has to all be Deathwatch. Your army can only include the following units, kill teams, that have been upgraded to have a specialism, which is what I just described, characters, Corvus Black Stars, and units with the dedicated transport battlefield role. Primaris kill team units, included in a detachment. It can include one impulsor for each other kill team unit included in a detachment. It can include one other dedicated transport unit. So basically, this army is comprised of Corvus Black Stars, dedicated transports, characters, and kill teams. That's it. That's all you get. So you can't take dreadnoughts. You can't take specific units. So you can't take a unit of Hellblasters. You can't take a Whirlwind. You can't take any of that stuff. You have to just take kill teams. And those kill teams have to have specialisms, which, as I've outlined, potentially can get expensive, especially given the fact that to run this army, you're probably going to be taking about 5 kill teams. So best case scenario, it's going to cost you 100 points. More realistically, it's probably going to get towards the kind of 120-ish level to upgrade all of those kill teams. But the benefits of this are, and Phil, please, I've been saying loads. Please tell us what the benefits are.
So all the Deathwatch units gain the Strike Force keyword, which is obviously a keyword. Hence the name of the whole armies of Renown. It's Kill Team Strike Force, so it's going to unlock your abilities. You get access to all the Kill Team warlord traits, relics, and stratagems. A Strike Force army can contain up to 2 Kill Team units with the same specialism, i.e., an army can contain up to 2 Venator Kill Team units or up to 2 Dominatus Kill Team units, with the exception of units upgraded using the Master of Specialisms rule. See Codex supplement Deathwatch, because I believe you can normally only do 1 of each until you've unlocked, until you've done them all, and then it kind of goes back and resets, and then you can do another lot of them. And then the last benefit is all the kill teams and character units from your army gain the Veterans of a Long Vigil ability, which is below. Shall I read that out?
Please, yeah, let's hear it.
So at the start of each battle round, you can select one chapter tactic or successor tactic from Codex Space Marines. If you do, then till the start of your next battle round, this unit has the chapter tactic or successor tactic. Oh God, I can't speak. Instead of the Xenos Hunter's ability, which is your, as you said, reroll 1s to hit against Xenos and your
in combat,
and your reroll 1s against whatever your battlefield role that you selected. In addition to that, it says you cannot select the same chapter tactic or successor tactic more than once per battle. Exclude those for Brotherhood of Veterans stratagem as described opposite. So that is a little hint to what you might be getting as one of the stratagems. Oh, and there's a third bullet point. So you also get each time you use the Brotherhood of Veterans stratagem, whilst the Strike Force kill team and Strike Force character units in your army are using a different chapter tactic to Xenos Hunters, the chapter tactic or successor tactic selected for the stratagem replaces whatever chapter tactic or successor tactic was selected at the start of the current battle round instead. Now, wasn't it nice and clean and not worded in a very roundabout way? But basically, it's for the purposes of this ability, you swap out this ability for that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the start of the battle round, you go, these are my units. This one's Imperial Fists. This one's Blood Angels. This one's White Scars. This one's Ultramarines. And this one's Salamanders. Done. Which is...
I don't think you do it per unit, though. Or do you?
No. At the start of each battle round, you select one chapter tactic or successor tactic. If you do, then until the start of the next... Oh, yeah, okay. No, yeah. So at the start of each battle round, you can select one chapter tactic or successor tactic from Codex Space Marines.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing. Because to me, it replaces your army-wide one. So I'd assume you select one ability for your entire army, and it replaces every unit.
Yeah, that needs
that one.
That needs a bit of FAQing because I would assert that you pick individual units for individual abilities. But if it is that it's army wide, then equally that's fine.
It makes more sense as army wide because the second half is you cannot select the same chapter tactic or successor tactic more than once per battle. So if you would run out of options by turn 3, basically.
Yes.
So the idea, I believe, is the honoured the stratagem they were talking about is basically you can use that to swap out your chapter. So your whole army has this battlefield chapter tactic. Then you can use a stratagem, and basically what it's saying is instead of swapping out the Xenos Hunter's ability for a different one, so you're changing your battlefield role, instead you're picking a unit and giving it a different chapter tactic instead of the one that the rest of the army has.
I'm with you. So what you're saying is that it gives it to one unit rather than the whole army.
It's saying when you're using
army.
No, so Veterans of a Long Vigil gives it to the whole army, but the Brotherhood of Veterans stratagem, which is in the Codex, is basically saying you pick a different, you pick a unit, give it a different chapter tactic for that battle.
Gotcha. Sorry,
for that turn.
I understand. We're singing off the same hymn sheet. I got lost somewhere in the bushes, but now I understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So basically, me and Phil are in alignment. Start the battle round. You go, cool. I'm Imperial Fists now, and for one turn, your whole army becomes an Imperial Fist army.
Yeah.
That can choose its doctrine, because you can still basically, as a Deathwatch army, say, now we're in the tactical doctrine, and I'm Imperial Fists. Yay! It's all right, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you still do the whole? Oh, because that's a different army-wide ability, right?
Yeah, it's a different army-wide ability, so it won't stop you choosing your doctrines.
Oh yeah, because it's not instead of it. Yeah, so I presume that still gets to do all of that.
So to be clear, that stratagem where you could do this before is 2 CP. 2 CP for that ability. That was limited to 1 unit. So it was pretty expensive. So the idea that you get this as an army-wide benefit really upweights the oomph of the Deathwatch here. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, because there's a lot of chapter tactics to choose from. So it gives you a lot of
massive amount.
Tactical flexibility.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, if you know that you're going to be going hyper aggressive for a turn, like say, for example, you're throwing stuff in, you could go Blood Angels to add 1 to your charge and add 1 to your wounds. If you know that you've gotten stuck in with a bunch of stuff and you want to get out and start shooting, you can go Ultramarines and just fall back and shoot. If you know that you're in for a tough turn of getting shot a lot, you go Iron Hands, and then you got the 6-up Feel No Pains. There's so many options in there just to basically be able to, customize and tactically adapt your army's options. And it's so potent.
I guess the downside is you have to use a different one each turn. So you need an army that isn't so wedded to, say, all close combat, because there is probably about 3 different chapter tactics that are close combat specific. But ideally, you want
there's loads.
But you probably will go on one that's you basically want a bit more of a balanced army where you can go, okay, for a turn, I'm just going to focus on shooting with my shooting half of my army, and then at some point, I'm going to pivot into my close combat units and focus on them. To sort of benefit from that. And so you want an army that can definitely, you need at least your 5 chapter tactics. So ideally, you kind of want to know what those are going to be and build your army around it. You'd hope, but then you've got all the others as a curveball if you do need them.
Oh yeah, and you've even got stuff like the successor tactics that no one thinks about. So, Blood Angels are great because they add 1s to their charges and add 1s to their wounds. But depending on the situation, you might go, actually, I'm going to go Flesh Terrors because the idea of extra hits on 6s sounds lovely.
The successor tactics is a weird one because all of a sudden then you're picking a combination of 2.
Basically, because the successor tactics. Yeah, because the successor tactics are relatively the same but different. Like Imperial Fists and Crimson Fists are practically the same thing. It's just Imperial Fists can more cover, and Crimson Fist get +1 to hit if they're shooting at something that's more numerous
so
than
generally
themselves.
you could probably get 2 turns of doing exactly the same thing, because there is normally a slightly watered down combination of a primary chapter tactic via the secondaries.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's quite useful.
No, it's massive, mate. I think it's really big, and we'll get to why I think it's big in a bit. But yeah, they've got warlord traits as well. So the specific warlord trait is Xenos Bane. So while friendly Strike Force kill team or Strike Force character units within 6 of this warlord, that unit has the Xenos Hunter chapter tactic. This means that you select a chapter tactic or successor tactic at the start of the battle round to the veterans of the Long War Vigil. That unit has both the chapter tactic or successor tactic and the Xenos Hunter's chapter tactic.
So this is an aura ability that gives you back your original Xenos Hunter's chapter tactic, so you can have both.
Correct.
That's really good.
It's huge. It's like, like the idea that you can literally have that aura going off and that you can, it's massive. It's really, really strong. So I like that. And then they've got a relic. Tell us what the relic is for.
It's Inquisitorial Cipher. If you're playing a mission that requires you to select either a secondary objective or an agenda, then after both players have revealed their selections, you can select one of your secondary objectives or agendas and replace it with a different one. So normally, and we've seen this before, you go, well, it's a bit rubbish, right? Why would you do that? But there's one extra thing. So all the normal rules apply when selecting secondary objectives and agendas, with the exception that after using this ability, you can have 2 Deathwatch secondary objectives or Deathwatch agendas. If both players have rules that allow you to select new secondaries or agendas, you basically make your new selections, simultaneously revealing them to your opponent. So you kind of redo it. But so on the outset, it seems a bit rubbish because most people pick their secondaries and they know what they're going to do almost regardless of what their opponent is doing. And I don't think there's not many cases where, depending on what your opponent selected, you're going to change your mind. But the fact that you're really actually just going to do this to select 2 Deathwatch ones, because normally the faction-specific ones tend to be a lot better than the non-faction specific ones. Now, obviously, I don't think you get access to, I can't remember if we talked about this before, the Space Marine specific ones and the Deathwatch ones, because normally the Deathwatch ones, I think, overwrite the Space Marine ones. So here, you still can't take the Space Marine one and the Deathwatch
No, you can.
one.
Weirdly, the general consensus is you can take a Space Marine one and a Deathwatch one because they're 2 separate things.
I didn't think you could. I thought there was some wording on the Deathwatch one which says this replaces the Space Marine one, but we'd have to.
Oh, maybe. Again, I'm fairly confident that the majority of people go with a Space Marine secondary and a successor chapter.
Because that would be, because I think that if that was the case, which I don't think it is, but if it was, I think that's somewhat unfair because it's an advantage to Space Marine players that no other faction gets.
Absolutely,
but with this,
especially
you can effectively get it because you get 2 Deathwatch factions.
Yes, cool. And there is viability in terms of if you know what your opponent's doing, because the proper way that this stuff is supposed to happen is we're supposed to pick them and then reveal them. That's supposed to be the way it goes. Now, in my experience, when playing in the mid to lower tables, as I do these days, no one cares. They just go, what are you doing then? Oh, I'm thinking about this. Yeah, I reckon this. Yeah, all right, I'm probably going to go. Yeah, what did you think? Yeah, like it's that kind of dialogue where you just sort of talk it out. The idea that you follow that kind of weird formulaic, right, it's a competitive game and I'm going to write it down on my notepad and reveal it to you.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
I think even in the top tables, I can't imagine them really doing that either because they've already pre-selected the ones they're going to do.
Yeah, some people do because some people are trying really hard to kind of observe the pageantry of it. And I admire that and I respect that. But at the same time, I just think, yeah, for the most part, unless you're planning on going to the absolute bleeding edge of a tournament, the ability to adjust your secondaries is relatively underwhelming. But the fact that you can potentially lean into taking 2 of the Deathwatch secondaries could be good if there are certain builds that you think would work well with those secondaries.
And I'll just make an additional point because we've talked about it to death in the past. The ability to change your secondaries would be great if you could do it mid-game because you realise you've messed up and you want to change your mind. But changing it literally after you've just revealed it to your opponents, I think, for the most part, will be really pointless. I mean, the only time I can maybe see someone would want to do it is if they've gone for, is it to the last, which is what it's now called, and your opponent's gone bring it down maybe, and all the things that are to the last, which is the last ones have to stay alive, are your big vehicles or Titans, and they've gone for Titan Hunter, for example. Then you've gone, well, there's no point in me doing that, and I want to change it to something else.
You might see some weird instances, though, right? Like where your opponent's gone behind enemy lines, for example, and you might have gone with the Deathwatch secondary, which is that you score 5 points for keeping units out of your deployment zone. So they've essentially given you an open statement of intent, which is my army is actually intending on getting into your lines. Well, then you can be like, well, seemingly this was a miscalculation. I can make a change. But you know what I mean? Like there are instances where it can be valuable.
Yeah,
but
I think most people would just double down and be like, yeah, I'm still doing it. Like, okay, I'm just going to try harder to stop you because it wins me points and denies you points. I think that's how most people would tend to look at it.
No, I hear you, mate. I hear you. Well, there we go. So that's the beginnings of it all. So some interesting rules to kick it off, some interesting conversations. FAQ hopefully inbound, unless, of course, it already exists, in which case we apologise for our lack of journalistic integrity. We don't do we don't do enough research.
Let's be honest, an FAQ for this will not be coming out for at least a couple of months. More than 1 month.
Go. You've heard
it. They're not. They're meant to be, or were at one point in the yonder past of the lovely 8th edition, 2 weeks after release. That hasn't happened in a very long time. What did we just have? Was it
Black Templars?
No. Sorry, the last FAQ that just came out. I think it was
Orcs.
Yeah, I think it was the Orc one. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't even know if they've had an FAQ yet. The Orcs. They are bonkers.
I think the York one was the one that came out. There was one a few weeks ago, and I think that was York.
Well, they are bonkers. Let me just say.
Oh well.
Anyway,
yes. Okay. We're talking about
stratagems. So, the first of the stratagems is by far and away the most weirdly worded, but also probably the most controversial. So, Phil, why don't you read what it is? Oh no, I'll read.
I was going to say you're going to make me read it out, aren't you?
No, I'll read it out because you did the cipher one. So yeah, fine. So this is called Specialism Extremis. It is a battle tactic stratagem, and it will cost you the princely sum of 3 command points. So use this stratagem in your shooting phase or the fight phase when you select a Strike Force Aquila, Strike Force Venator, Malleus, Dominatus, Furia, or Purgatus unit from your army to shoot or fight. So that's basically all of the kill teams.
Yeah.
Effectively. That's all of the kill team specialisms.
They've been upgraded.
So that's not the names of the kill teams. That's the name of the kill team specialisms. Anyway, I'll carry on. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, a successful hit roll automatically wounds its target. Oof. If the attack was made by an Aquila model, Venator, basically it goes through the different things. So it was made by an Aquila model. The attack was made by a Venator model against the thing. Basically,
it's the specialism that it's meant to be going up against anyway. That would give it the reroll 1s to wound, or was it reroll 1s to hit?
Yes. Noting though, the Aquila specialism lets you automatically wound against everything, and the Aquila specialism is the cheapest specialism. It's the 15-pointer, which is pretty bonkers. So these guys automatically wound everything if they're Aquila. And you're almost certainly going to end up taking 2 Aquila kill teams because they're the ones that are cheap. Anyway, so that's that point. And this stratagem cannot be used to select the same strike force unit more than once per battle. So basically, a strike. So here is the real problem with this film, and I'm just going to say it. It is mad because, in theory, right, I can take a 10-man unit kill team of firstborn Space Marines, and I can put them in a drop pod, which is a dedicated transport option, and I can give every single one of those models a Storm Bolter. I can then declare that I am an Imperial Fist turn 1, and then my unit of Storm Bolters will appear turn 1, as is their wont, and I will roll 40 shots, hitting on freeze, re-rolling something, I imagine, because maybe I've managed to slingshot a Phobos captain up the way or whatever, which is probably something that you're going to probably look at in order to synergize with this for the re-roll ones. But the point is, I'm going to roll my 40 dice with 6s becoming 2 hits because I'm Imperial Fist. And I'm going to say I'm in the tactical doctrine because that's another thing I can do. So my Stormbolt is a -1. And I'm going to proceed to shoot you 40 times with any 6s becoming 2 hits. I'm probably on average going to go, cool, that unit just took 42 wounds.
Yeah. That's quite good. It's weird. I think I sort of believe that there's half a sentence missing on the Aquila one. So when you upgrade your Aquila unit, you have to select a battlefield role that it gets to re-roll its ones against. So it sort of makes sense that here it would say
no, that's not the rules for the Aquila. Aquila's just re-roll ones against everything, I'm pretty sure. Or is it specifically? Or maybe you're right.
I mean, unless the rules I'm reading are out of date.
But that's in. Let me double check myself, mate, because I'm
because it says
it has been a while since I've actually looked at these.
It says after selecting a battlefield role for the purposes of Xenos Hunter chapter tactic for your army, select one additional battlefield role until the end of the battle.
That's right. Yes.
Each time a model in this unit makes an attack against an enemy unit with that selected battlefield role, re-roll wound rolls of 1. So it sort of makes sense that your attacks automatically wounds if you're attacking a unit that has the battlefield role that you've selected for your Aquila unit. Because otherwise it just sort of, as you say, it makes this unit bonkers good in comparison. And it's like, why would you bother upgrading all? I mean, the others are good because you get the reroll ones natively against, just from the upgrade. Yeah, but the Aquila one almost feels like more versatility, and as you say, it's the cheapest one. So it feels like there's a bit missing from that line to balance it out from the rest. But the Malleus one works against heavy Lord of War dedicated transports. The Venator works against fast attack and fly. So some have dual roles. Domitus is only against elites. Fiora's only against troops, and Purgatos is against HQs. And this stratagem cannot be used to select the same strike force unit more than once per battle. So that's a limitation on it as well. But I mean, also free CP is like, oh, that's expensive.
Yeah, but the fact is, right, is if someone's brought Mortarion, for example, and you turn around to Mortarion turn 1 and go, cool, you're just taking 42 wounds, he's probably going to be dead.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a limit on the amount of damage he can take, does he?
No, he doesn't. And he's only got a 4-up save in that scenario, which admittedly is still good if he's taking las cannon shots, but when he's taking 42 saves...
Yes, because he's not benefiting from -1 damage, and he still get his 5-up feel no pain, but...
He will do, yeah. So, if you do the maths hammer on it, he takes 21 wounds, and then of those 21 wounds... he would be able to tank 7 of them, so he'd be left with 14 wounds when it all shakes out on him, or he would have taken 14 wounds. But I think Mortarion's got 16 wounds, but that's still massive, though, right? Like to be able to basically turn around to Mortarion and be like, "Yeah, you're in trouble now, turn 1."
It's really good, and we know from the Admech stratagem, which did something similar, which is that was only against infantry, and it was a hit roll of a 5+, you automatically win.
Well, so no, it's against anything that isn't a vehicle, so you can also use that stratagem against Mortarion.
That was the wording of it, yeah. So yeah, that was pretty good, but that was too cheap because originally it was just 1 CP, and then I think
Originally it was 1 CP and it auto wounded on 4s, which was madness.
Yeah, and then they changed it to 5s and 2 CP, I think. So it's still good. I mean, this is 3 CP, so it's better, arguably, in terms of it's a bit more niche and it's much more limited in terms of how many times you can use it on a certain unit. But yeah, but I think the 3 CP makes it feel balanced while still being devastatingly good the few times.
I mean, against the right targets, though, right? Like if I was running that list I was running with my Knight Castellan and this rocked up, it could, in theory, drop my Knight Castellan in a turn. Because my Knight Castellan doesn't shrug any of those wounds. So it would just go, oh, cool, I've just taken, 21 wounds in a turn. And now I've just got to be like, oh, I've got 7 left. And I've still got the rest of this Space Marine army doing stuff. So it's like, yeah, odds on you can drop a Knight Castellan in pretty effortlessly in an opening turn of shooting from Deathwatch, bolstered in part by this. Now, obviously, we're talking about a very specific set of criteria here. We're talking about a unit that is, built to try and maximize the impact of that. But the fact is that's possible. And because it is possible, it is pretty flipping scary. It's not really in the spirit of the endeavor, but it is pretty strong. So yeah, something to think about. But yeah, definitely the one thing that's gotten people kind of talking. And if you had 2 of these kill teams, so say you had 2 Aquila kill teams, both in drop pods. The first one comes down, it's Imperial Fists. The second one comes down and it's Crimson Fists. It does the exact same thing.
True, and you just do one turn 1, another turn 2. So you, I mean, do you even need the drop pods? Because isn't there a teleportation?
Yeah, but that doesn't let you come in turn 1.
Oh, right. So you
drop
want
pods
one
do.
into. Okay, right, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so maybe you don't need the drop. You maybe need 1 drop pod and then you teleport the other one for 1 CP.
Yeah, because there's nothing else you'd want to teleport because your army is all infantry plus transports. Yeah. So you'd probably do that, and then you'd probably anyway, madness is what that is. On the topic of teleportoriums, the next stratagem is a strategic ploy stratagem for 1 CP called Battlefield Teleportorium. Teleportation.
Use the stratagem teleportation. Jesus, see, I'm trying to add. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for making me feel small. Anyway,
shall I read this one out then, and then you have a break?
Oh yeah, I read that one. Exactly. See, I'm tired, Phil. Please save me from myself.
Exactly. So you can use a stratagem at the start of your movement phase. Select 1 Strike Force kill team or Strike Force character unit from your army. Remove that unit from the battlefield. In the reinforcement step of your next movement phase, you can set that unit back up on the battlefield anywhere that is more than 9 inches from an enemy model. You know the drill. If the battle ends and that unit is not on the battlefield, it is destroyed. So you can sort of do a teleport jump that takes a turn, which is pretty cool.
Noting that there's no stipulations about you needing to be in combat or anything like that. You just do it.
Oh, yeah, that's good. So you could kind of be in combat, teleport away, so you've sort of fallen back, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you're off the table for a turn. I guess that's the downside. But if you, for example, you've done your drop pod tactic, you've shot something off, and you're now stuck in the corner of the battlefield, out of the game, so to speak. Although that seems unlikely on such small boards now. # small board gang. But then you could use this ability to then jump them to somewhere a bit more useful for the rest of the battle.
Yeah. Which, again, if you've taken storm shields and storm bolters, you're probably quite tanky. So you can probably weather the initial storm of what comes back to you. And, if you've got a few models left, you could just teleport them out of there and then do some actions or something with the random little 3-man unit that will just be plodding around.
True.
Handy dandy. Well, there we go. Honored Veteran of the Watch. This is a requisition stratagem for 1 CP. Is it my turn to read this one, Phil?
It is indeed.
All right, here we go. Use the stratagem before the battle when you are mustering your army. If your warlord has the Strike Force keyword, select one Deathwatch model in your army that has the word Sergeant in their profile, excluding the Watch Sergeant from Kill Team Cassius. Add 1 to that model's wound characteristic, making it 3 wounds if it is anything other than a heavy intercessor, in which case it will go up to 4 wounds. And determine 1 warlord trait for that model. It is only regarded as your warlord for the purposes of that warlord trait. Each warlord trait in your army must be unique. You can only use the stratagem once. So you end up with a extra wounded sergeant that has a warlord trait.
It's pretty cool. It's a bit like the
Very cool.
Black Templars upgrades to sergeants, not as powerful, but in that episode we talked about it. I like the idea of giving your sergeants extra abilities and making them mini characters. It's quite thematic.
Here is a question. If I gave my sergeant Imperium Sword, would the whole unit get to reroll charges?
Ooh, yes.
That's my thinking as well.
I don't know if there's a rare rule that is explicit about that, but normally when there's an ability that affects, for example, part of the unit, it tends to affect the whole unit. So I would have thought so, yes.
Wow.
Because you could just be like, he's the one doing the charge.
Exactly. He's leading them. Come on now, lads. Have a chew.
Yeah, because it's not a specific... Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a specific Deathwatch only warlord trait, so it could be...
it's any warlord
that
trait
you've got access to. So, yeah, it could be the Space Marine ones as well. Obviously, things like auras would only be from him. You couldn't be like, oh, it's the aura from the squad. Ha ha.
Yes.
That'd be a bit too bad.
Yeah. Still, though, pretty interesting.
I'm trying to sort of unlocks loads of, not necessarily janky, but loads of interesting combos that we've never really got to explore before, because all of a sudden you go, okay, cool, he's a combat monster, but he's kind of in a unit and protected. He's got all these extra wounds that you've got to kill first before I remove my sergeant model, for example. So, yeah, I like it.
But you could give him, again, if you went firstborn, you could give him like a lightning claw, an Imperium sword or something. It could be pretty tasty in combat. Or, you could have the super thunder hammer or whatever it's called in that veteran squad. The heavy thunder hammer, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
So yeah, he could be pretty monstrous.
Yeah. Can he take the thunder hammer though?
He can if he's a firstborn guy, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the sergeant can still take... The sergeant of the firstborn unit can still take the super thunder hammer, or the heavy thunder hammer.
Okay, yeah.
But if you take that variant, it's two-handed, so you couldn't take the storm bolter or the storm shield in that instance.
True.
But you could take a regular thunder hammer, should you want to.
That is true, yeah. Yeah.
And regular thunder hammers are cheaper when you take them on sergeants.
Yes, that is also true.
So there you go. Fun times there.
It seems pretty interesting. Anyway, let's move on to the Black Vault Bolts, which is 1 CP. It's a war gear stratagem. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when you select a Strike Force kill team or Strike Force character unit from your army to shoot. Until the end of the phase, you gain 2 abilities. The type characteristic of all bolt weapon models in that unit are equipped with is changed to Heavy 1. That might sound bad, but wait. Each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack with a bolt weapon, an unmodified wound roll of 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. A maximum of 6 mortal wounds can be inflicted per phase via this stratagem. So basically, yeah, your bolt guns become Heavy 1, and then any 6 to wound does a mortal wound plus your normal damage. Crazy good.
Yeah, strong. Pretty strong.
I mean, for 1 CP, that's pretty nice, I think.
Oh, it's great for 1 CP. Like, I mean, okay, making your weapons Heavy 1 is a negative, but the fact remains that if you build into this, you can obviously use the Stalker bolt rifle, which is heavy one by default. So
True.
you're not necessarily losing out on too much.
And obviously,
Yeah,
you
could be
could
interesting.
be getting your reroll ones to wound, or because of your chapter stuff or chapter tactic. I mean, depends what you go with, or if you're getting the Xenos Bane ability. So you can get your rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound, to up your ability to get those mortal wounds.
Yeah. I mean, basically, what we can kind of take away from this is it just is increasing the flexibility of a book that has consistently shown itself to be flexible. So effectively, this makes Deathwatch like triple jointed or whatever. Like they're so flexible. They're contortionists now in terms of their levels of flexibility. There's so much you can do with Deathwatch now.
Yeah, I wonder how many people would want to do this for the trade-off of not taking vehicles and dreadnoughts, for example. Because I imagine a lot of people, especially for a 2,000-point game, have vehicles and dreads to bulk out the points in their army. So suddenly going, actually, you can't have any of those. Most people would probably struggle to have enough infantry to be able to make up a full army. But if you're doing smaller point games, I think this is, to me, this is, if you're doing 1,000-point games, this would be fantastic. It's super thematic. It's much more like I've got my kill teams, which is kind of how Deathwatch should be, really. So I like the idea of it, and the extra benefits you can get are pretty cool.
Yeah, I really hope that people actually embrace it for more its opportunity to bring to life the thematic ideas of Deathwatch, rather than doing what I just said, which is going, here's a 10-man unit with Stormbolters. Because obviously you can do that, but it's not really what it's for.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it can look cool if you've got a unit all with Storm Shields and Stormbolters. And I remember old Joe, the third member of the team, doing that when he was into Deathwatch in 8th edition. He was basically just spamming Storm Shields and Stormbolters because they were what was hot for Deathwatch back then. But yeah, it kind of goes against the flavor of what they should be, where they've got some mixed weapons in there, which I think ultimately is always going to be a downside to units that have it. And we were talking about it with Black Templars last week. When you have a lot of mixed weapons, it sort of slows the game down, because you're rolling a bunch of different dice for all these different weapons, and ultimately they're maybe not shooting at the most efficient targets. But I think thematic wise, and it just looks so much better, especially for Deathwatch. That's what Deathwatch is meant to be. And if you're not playing them like that, it's like, can you even Deathwatch, basically?
I think they might argue they are, but then I agree. I think it's not really in the spirit of the army. It's supposed to be a bunch of people respect. The thing is, this is the thing, right? I lean on the idea that I really like the uniformity of Deathwatch from an aesthetics perspective. I totally get how for converters and for hobbyists and painters, it's the perfect army to express your creativity and to do all these different beautiful miniatures. I quite like the idea of Deathwatch still kind of basically foregoing all of its chapter origins and essentially being much more kind of, I'm in the Deathwatch now, I just wear my black armor and I have my silver arm, and my only thing is my chapter icon. I'm much more in favor of Deathwatch being much more utilitarian like that. But I do also adore when I see painters and collectors who go to town on Deathwatch and just pour personality into the figures. It's not how I would do Deathwatch, because I think I'm much more just in favor of that, that cold sort of dark uniformity. But I think, again, that's the joy of the army. You can interpret and do it different ways, which is
I think I have to agree with you. I think if I was to do them, I'd want them to be a bit more utilitarian and a bit more standardized and homogenized. And I think that's partly because, well, here's the thing, I love converting models, but at the same time I'd also want to build a force that's relatively quick to do, and I'm always struggling with that compromise. So I probably would go with the let's just keep them all the same, just give them a unique shoulder pad and keep it relatively simple. However, I might end up deviating down the conversion rabbit hole and giving them all a bit more personality. Like, so Damien Pedley and Martin Waller are two fantastic Deathwatch players. Like, if you check them out on Instagram, they've beautifully converted up all the models. Like Damien Pedley, especially, like, I think he basically freehands every chapter symbol on all the shoulder pads and stuff, which is madness. But highly converted and look fantastic. And what's interesting thinking about it, like, now I get the logic of why you can pick a chapter tactic for your army. It's almost like the Space Wolf players are like, come here, lads, let me show you how it's done. And they're basically teaching the rest of the squad how to fight like a Space Wolf for a turn. And then the Imperial Fist is like, no, get your bolters out, boys. It's like this. So I like that kind of nod to the fact that they are from all these chapters, so should ultimately be able to gain all these chapter tactics over the course of the game. So that's quite cool, actually. Very ties in well with what they're meant to be doing.
Yeah, but definitely has the potential to be very strong in game as well, which I'm sure is no bad thing for those people out there who are inclined to enjoy a competitive game of Warhammer 40,000. But anyway, there you go. That was our summary of that. I guess we're going to move on now to whatever it is we decide to do next. Transitional noise. Woo! All right then, everybody. Despite our best intentions, you might have picked up throughout the podcast, I wasn't at my best. So we didn't manage to get fortifications done. And now we are scrambling on a Friday during our lunch breaks to quickly smash together an outro so as this whole thing has a continuity and a semblance of order to it that, you know, doesn't feel utterly disjointed. So fortifications, we'll get around to doing at another point in the future, noting that obviously it makes more sense to talk about fortifications within the confines of, what's it called again now, Phil? Planet Strike?
Planet Strike, which is in the latest Crusade pack, I guess it's called. Yeah.
Well, there we go. We're going to eke out months worth of content from this gorgeous book. Actually, on the topic of it being a gorgeous book, Phil, have people's resolve, so to speak, have people's displeasure of these sorts of books diminished, in your opinion? Do you feel like people are a little more accepting and or forgiving of these types of books, or do you feel like they're more hated than ever?
100% no. Like, they are not accepted. I mean, so we've done a community post about it. I didn't specifically ask their thoughts on the concept of the books. It was more, what do you like about the book? What do you don't like about the book? A lot of people are still like, this is DLC. They don't like it and they want the codexes, which is sort of understandable. And we've said before, I think if these came out after the codexes, everyone would be loving them. And I think they're sort of like a weird stopgap, but isn't really solving anything as well. And we talked about that in the actual episode itself. I think people that are more narrative gamers, or you know, they don't just want to buy a book for the rules. They're the people that are going to get the most out of this. If you play Crusade, you'll probably really enjoy these sort of books. But even then, people will understand that if you're playing an old 8th edition army, especially, you know, Guard and Chaos, as we mentioned, you're going to really struggle. So this will help to a small extent, but it doesn't solve the bigger problems with 40k at the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think, strangely, I've just kind of broadly come to a place where I just accept the nonsense in a kind of...
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, probably in a quite unhealthy way, to be honest with you. I probably need to be more critical from time to time with these kinds of practices. But regardless, I think, yeah, to me, I'm not massively worried about it, but I do understand where the root of frustration comes from. And, you know, one thing I suppose that was also going on this week that I was probably a little bit like, ooh, blimey, they've pooed the bed a bit on this one, was this week's series of Warhammer Plus releases. The inevitable, hey, look, everyone, here's a Starties on our platform and a Kill Team narrative back report. See you again next week. It was like, wow, that's and Lore Master talking about Nagash, I suppose. But I mean, crikey, they're not doing themselves too many favors, are they, with that?
Well, they did a post showing here's all the content we've delivered over 2 months, and when you look at everything, it's like, well, it's quite a decent amount. But yeah, for someone that wants to look at it every single week, there's sometimes just like no content in there, or content we've already seen.
Yes.
Or just not enough content. I mean, I don't mind. I haven't even been on Warhammer Plus in a couple of weeks now, so I've got a bit of a backlog of stuff to catch up on. And it's just, I just think because there's nothing really enough to entice me to go on it every single week. But I'm paid up, so I'm sort of stuck with it, I guess. So I'll check it out. Oh, I thought the thing you were going to mention when you were saying that they've pooed the bed, you were maybe going to talk about the free datasheet that they've done for the new Adeptus Sororitas unit, because it feels like that should have been really in either the actual Codex when it came out, but maybe the models just weren't ready in time, which seems like a viable option, or in which came out at the same time, really, the Warzone book, which had sisters in. Maybe they would have put it in there. So it seems odd. This is the first time in a long time where they've gone, here's a data sheet for free as a PDF. I think the last time I think they did it was with the Forge World units for Custodes in 8th edition. And going back in 7th edition, they did this sort of thing all the time because, a Codex wouldn't be released for years. So the Tyranids released, and you got the rules for free in White Dwarf, but also online which was going back, 5-6 years now, when Tyranids got a new model. Do you remember those days?
I do. They were lovely times. I'm just looking at their data sheet now. I actually didn't even know this happened. I missed this altogether.
Well, I know. Yeah, if you're not rabidly watching or avidly watching Facebook as I do, you don't. You probably won't see these things, or Warhammer community, of course.
Yeah, no. Well, I tend to be quite active on it, but obviously my wedding antics during the week has left me relatively off the grid, so I've missed a few of these instances. I mean, what's interesting about it, I suppose, is that obviously when we first saw this box set or the images of these sisters, I think you and I did speculate how they were going to release the rules for them. I assumed they were just going to be in, Warzone Octarius type book or whatever.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Well, and it wouldn't surprise me if down the road Games Workshop commit the ultimate faux pas and release these in one of these Warzone books in the future, just to be like, well, it's there just in case you wanted it. And then obviously it will synergize with the Warhammer Plus app and all that stuff. Because, not Warhammer Plus, sorry, just the Warhammer 40,000 app. I mean, is this squad just being added to Warhammer 40k, the app? If you already own Adeptus Sororitas, do you get this squad added?
Well, let's check it out. It's called Novitiates, isn't it?
Something like that, yes. Sister Noviata squad. Noviata.
N-O-V-I?
Yeah, N-O-V-I-T.
No. N-O-V-I, nothing comes up, so they don't exist.
But you might have had to have put sisters at the front of it.
Well, then it's not a very good search term. Hold on, I'll go Adeptus Sororitas data sheet.
It's almost like the app's a bit rubbish, Phil. Anyway, the long and short of it is, I don't really care because it's a free PDF. I mean, I don't really see how... Are people kicking up a stink about that?
It doesn't seem to be in the data sheets for the
maybe
app
it will
yet.
be.
It might be over the weekend, for example. I'm not really seeing too many people comment on it, really. I've seen just people going, here's the data sheet, take a look at it.
Okay.
It's free rules. People love free rules. So how it's being released, if it was being released in a book, people would probably just complain because, it's a book I've got to buy. Even though if it was in the Sisters book, you would be buying that book anyway as a Sisters player.
Well, indeed. I think, again, it's fine. It is what it is. But no, Warhammer Plus, bit lukewarm on that this week. But maybe it will continue to, get better. Maybe one day it will be a valuable standalone service. Although, to be fair to them, they did obviously do a reasonable job with creating that Kill Team Battle Report. I thought the minis and settings that they did was actually quite pretty. But at the same time, it did just have that sort of weird YouTube channel / scraping the barrel type vibe to it. Where it's like, we need something. What you got? We'll make some models themed around one of our, shows. Fine, that'll do. Move along. And yeah, but fair play to them. They got to do something. So at least they did. But anyway, let's not worry about that at this point. Let's talk about what we talked about in the episode. More particularly, let's try and address some of our lovely community questions from our patrons, our Facebook peoples, our Instagrammers, noting that I have 25 minutes before this lunch break ends. So let's see how much we can do in that time.
Let's start from the top. We're going to go with Sean. He says, it's definitely one of the for F's sakes Games Workshop policies where the DLC for my faction is only available as a bundle with a bunch of stuff I'm not interested in. I've accepted that paid DLC is a thing for my toy soldiers, but at least let me purchase only what I want, which is an interesting proposition. So I guess he's saying, please only let me pay maybe less for the few pages of my specific faction. So would you buy a pamphlet or a digital update for the kill team just on its own? At that point, it's like, unless it's costing you a couple of quid, just make it a free PDF if you're splitting the faction stuff down.
Yeah, I think, again, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you'd think with their digital distribution methods via the 40k app that it would be plausible that they could break down certain, components and sell those as separate little, bits.
They used to be able to do that with AOS, the battalions that you could, which are like effectively like factions or formations. Formations. You could just be like, oh, I want to unlock this particular one. I'm sure you could buy them individually, although I'm not 100% sure on that.
You definitely could. Yes, you definitely could.
So maybe they could do something like that. And, they've got the app. And sometimes, weirdly, when you search for something, it says it's locked and it goes, click here to unlock it. And, it just gets stuck in a bit of a, you need to subscribe, but I'm a subscriber loop, which I think is just something wrong with it. But you could potentially go, oh, I just want to unlock the sisters part of it. Let me pay a couple of quid. Don't have the codex. You're not giving me the codex. You're just unlocking access to it, and it's a bit like the EPUB concept of codexes before. They've clearly done away with that because they knew everyone would just somehow rip them and pirate them. But you can't really do that within this app. It's like a closed system. So if someone was able to unlock the data sheets, abilities for sisters or the extra rules that you get for having owned the codex versus being a subscriber on its own, like that should be fine. So you should be able to do that. And there will be some people that will not want the codex but happily buy the digital stuff, and they'd potentially get a bit of extra money that they might not otherwise see that way. I assume Games Workshop logic is no, we lose out on people buying the codex if we do it that way. But I think there's so little extra in the app that people are still incentivized to buy the codex as well.
I feel like, though, in the general sense, we are approaching a time where it almost feels like certain ways that these guys are monetizing their rules content are becoming a little bit kind of disjointed. And it does feel like, there is an argument that you should be making certain elements of the rules free because it benefits the game overall, because it means it's easier to access for more players and that kind of stuff. And I'm not 100% sure I kind of abide to that idea, but I do feel like a subscription service like Warhammer Plus should facilitate access to all rules as part of that subscription service.
Oh yeah, and there's definitely been a couple of comments like that in, I think, our Instagram post. People suggested Warhammer Plus as a method of unlocking this extra content.
And that would be really helpful, I think, because there definitely needs to be something done to improve this distribution process, because Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're a lunatic like me and you buy all this stuff because you do a 40k podcast and you feel obliged to, then fine, like you take that for what it is. But realistically, it is a lot, and it is a frustrating distribution system where you have to kind of pick up all this stuff piecemeal. So I do understand the frustration. I just think the thing is that, yeah, I don't know. I just think it is frustrating. I can't really say anything other than that. It's not really all that great, is it? It's just a bit of a bother.
Yeah, and also I guess to touch on a slightly different angle is within the Warhammer app itself, you can only view the rules by the book. So I can't just go click on Adeptus Sororitas and show me all the rules from every single book. So whether that's Psychic Awakening, a new war zone, a codex, or another kind of supplement, show me all of them in just one place. I don't really care the source of the book, but because they're so wedded to the idea of the books, sometimes you're looking for a certain rule and it's not in the codex section, it's within the Psychic Awakening section or the war zone section. It's like, that's a real faff to find stuff. So I think that in itself would just tidy it up, or just give people the option to toggle between them, like show me it via factions or show me via publications, to help people navigate the app.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think, the app has a lot to be. There's a lot left to desire from the app, and certainly the ease of usability is there, especially when it comes to dealing with like those specific kind of like, Army of Renown rules, because the way they kind of demonstrate those is pretty weak. If they even choose to, there's a lot of instances where they just don't even include certain bits, which is very strange. But there you go.
True.
Fun.
We'll move on to the next one, which touches somewhat on what we've just been talking about. So Joe says, couldn't agree more. I think your last podcast and the living rule set hit the nail on the head. I could accept begrudgingly that I may need to pay for multiple small updates to rule sets for armies that I own, but at least help me out, Games Workshop, by allowing me to pay for just the faction I'm interested in and keep the rules all in one place for me. I couldn't care less that some people don't have the app. Let them buy the books. For the rest of us, plastic crack addicts, please help us. And then he says, on a practical note, I'm 6'2" and 16 and a bit stone. I work out 5 days a week. Still, I even find the sheer number of books and models challenging at times. I assume he's talking about physically carrying them around as a somewhat big man, both in size and stature, I guess. Also, I'd like Games Workshop to help me out in an unexpected and ultimately thoughtful fashion that leaves me feeling like the special person that I am. The last point may be a little whimsical. Is he talking about like a little bonus, a little treat, a little... Because in theory, that is sort of what you get with the Warhammer Plus. Every month you're meant to get a special thing. Actually, have you had your special Deathwatch pin badge yet? I certainly haven't. That they talked about.
No, I haven't had that.
That was was that for October, wasn't it, or November maybe?
Yeah,
because October was the voucher, right?
I got the voucher. Yeah, that definitely manifested
runs
itself
out as we speak. This the end of the month.
Oh, is it limited? Is it?
Yeah, only lasts a month. I think that's something we talked about before about you. So that if you haven't spent it, you need to spend it by Sunday, as of recording. So only a couple of days left. I'm going to save it and use it to buy the limited edition Blade Guard guy who looks like the captain but is a lieutenant.
What, on the weekend?
On the weekend. So yeah, tomorrow, as of recording, yeah, I'll be using it to buy that to, so it only cost me, I guess, £8 instead of 18 quid is my guess.
Value. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, the amount of books is, and it's interesting, isn't it? Right, because I think one of the things that's really interesting about this situation is that one of the situations or one of the benefits they tried to sell us on with 8th edition was the idea that they were streamlining the game and making it like we needed less literature in order to play. And that was true for all of, a year or two. But by the end, with Psychic Awakening, it got absurd. But now with like Astra Militarum, it's beyond bonkers, because technically now, if you want to run a Cadia army, you got to have the Astra Militarum Codex. You're probably going to have the Forge World Compendium, because you've probably got something in there that comes from there. You've probably then got to have the Psychic Awakening that relates to the tank commanders and all the stuff that is
or
within
you're
that.
doing an extra regiment on the side, potentially.
Potentially, you've got your Scions going on or something of that nature. And now you've got this book as well. So you could be looking at like 5 books just to run an army of Cadians. It's like, it's just sort of, it is diving into the realms of the absurd again. But I think the problem is that obviously GW sells a lot of books when they release said books. They get bought.
Here's the thing, though. So again, take a drink. When I went to No Retreat, I actually only took I think my Astra Militarum Codex, because it's a bit of lightweight. Normally, you're meant to, when you go to a gaming event, take all the books that you need. It's like, I'm not lugging around the Forge World book, even though I need it. I'm not lugging around the core rule book, even though you technically need it. I was like, I actually just looked everything up on my app, like for all the rules constantly, because the search is quick enough that on the spot you're like, oh, a quad rapier, what does that do? I can quickly type it in and just swap between the couple of units that I was playing new, like the Thud Gun, the Rapiers, and the Avenger Strike Fighter were the only rules I really wasn't 100% on. So it was quite useful for that, just to quickly check between them. So actually having the app does allow you to go, cool, I've got the rule books, but actually I don't need them for playing the game whatsoever. I mean, some people do like physical books to like flip through the pages or have a page open, which is quite difficult to do, but unless it's ring bound, unlike the current GT book. I took the GT book. That was the other thing. So the Astra Militarum and GT book were the 2 that I took, and that was relatively lightweight. Otherwise, it would have been a right pain to lug all of that around on in air quotes, a holiday.
Yes. Yeah. No, there's a lot of books that go into the game right now, which is a bother. But there you go. All right.
Next one from one of our newest patrons, a guy called
welcome
Odin. He says it'll be interesting to see if this is the last push for Cadia, or if they will get more updates in the much anticipated Astra Militarum Codex. Furthermore, now that we have been fed a bit more information about the Adepta Sororitas novitiates, what do you guys think of them? Seems likely that they can be fielded as sword and auto pistol, or with auto guns in 40k. Judging from the description in the Warhammer Community article, would love to hear your take on the role this squad would take. Personally, I'm not all that convinced I need them, but in a true plastic junkie style, I've pre-ordered 2 boxes, of course.
What, 2 of the actual big boxes that they've just released? That's crazy.
God, that is, yeah. I was thinking 2 of the squads, but you can only get them in the kill team boxes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're getting a lot of decent terrain out of
that is true.
Out of them.
That is true. How much is that box retailing for, though? Like 120?
Is it actually up for pre-order already, that kill team
box?
Well,
I think it goes up for pre-order this weekend, doesn't it?
Well, he says he's already done it, unless he's talking about himself in the future. But yeah.
Oh, no, because...
he might have just put a word in with his local shop, I guess, for pre-ordering them.
Who knows for sure how that is all shaked out. But the point is that, they look all right. I mean, I think there's some interesting options within them. Having just read the datasheet now, it's a bit of a hot take, but I do think they are a reasonable, cheap, unit that can and will be pretty useful in close combat, which is something that outside of the Repentia and the new boogie board sisters, the ones with the shields and maces, is relatively underrepresented within the sisters. It tends to be that the sisters are very mid-range shooting based. So the fact that you can have this 75-point unit of 10 sisters that benefit from Acts of Faith, Sacred Rites, Shield of Faith, and they've also got this, charge benefit, which is each time this unit fights. Not charge benefit, this combat benefit, which is each time this unit fights. If it made a charge move this turn, there it is. Then until that fight is resolved, add 1 to the attack characteristics of models in this unit. So you can get a reasonable amount of attacks out of them, especially given that they are armed with
you can give them the novitiate melee weapon, which allows you to attack 1 extra time.
Yes,
which also gives you +1 strength. So by default, you got 1 attack, but actually that becomes 3 once you factor in your Führer and your weapon at strength 4, no AP. So that's not too bad.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And also, in terms of the stipulation concerning these as only being able to take as many of these as you have battle sister squads. Obviously, that's a consideration in terms of how you build that out, because obviously in your standard battalion, you couldn't have 2 of these and 1 battle sister squad. You do obviously need to lean more heavily into the battle sisters. But up till now, I think, with the sisters armies, they've definitely relied quite extensively on a solid core of battle sisters. These are the things that have been, quite prominently featured. One, because it's their only troop choice up until now. So yeah, I just think it's nice to have more options in that space. The fact that it's a 10, model unit that you get for around 75 points base ain't too bad. I mean, what's that? 25 points more than a guardsman squad. So, not bad for a unit with 4 up armor saves and ballistic skill 3+. I suppose that's the only other thing actually in terms of leaning into their combat variant. They don't have an especially high weapon skill, so maybe that's something to think about because they're only weapon skill 4+. So maybe you might be more keen on leaning into the auto gun variant of them.
Yeah.
Either way,
it's
they're
interesting. Yeah.
It's weird. I don't play enough sisters and to completely comfortably understand exactly where they might fit into the army's archetype.
Yeah, because there are better close combat units that are much more dedicated close combat units. This is an interesting all-rounder that's also just, they're basically the equivalent of cultists or, plague bearers. They sort of feel like that similar role of cheaper chaff units, but also still have that sort of stipulation of you can only take 1 of these for every 1 of the more classic archetype of the army, which seems to be a theme we see a lot more at the moment. It'd be interesting to see if, for example, conscripts for guard get a rule that says, and I don't believe it has one already, like you can only take 1 conscript squad for each infantry squad you can take, for example. It feels like that's the sort of thing that they would have when you look at, cultists and, the novitiates as well.
Yeah, totally. I think overall it's interesting to have options. These give you options. Whether you decide to utilize them or not is going to depend heavily on your own personal kind of, army list builds and all the rest of it. But it sounds like a good squad. It seems like it's pointed relatively efficiently. It looks like it's got some good options. I don't hate it. I think there's quite a lot to like in it, and it offers a lot of flexibility. And the minis are pretty decent as well. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand why people will want to run these in their sisters' armies. So, good luck to them if they do. I look forward to seeing what the deal is with them as and when I see them appear more often. All right, I've got 6 minutes, Phil. 6 minutes. Are we going to need to break and come back later?
No, I think, what we can do is, because next week we're still going to be talking about Warzone Octarius, we can carry on with the rest of the community questions then, or we can squeeze
I like your thinking.
We can squeeze in one more now if you want.
I've got 6 minutes still, technically, or maybe 5.5, so go on.
Okay. Ketchup Truffle Duck, we're going to answer yours.
Is Ketchup Truffle Duck coming back to us, is he?
Yes, KTD.
KTD.
He says
1602, wasn't it?
not this time, but
Oh,
yes,
okay.
maybe. Anyway, Ketchup Truffle Duck says, just make Warzones part of Warhammer Plus. I feel like it's a bit niche if you don't play those armies, and those codexes will be coming out soonish. So why not? So why not wait? In terms of the infrastructure, they already have the web and design team working on Warhammer Vault. Am I off my rocker on this? Dan, Phil, help me out.
I mean, I don't think so. I think the problem is, though, isn't it? It's again implying that there is a level of pre-planning or, actual kind of real, detailed, release planning that goes into a lot of this stuff. I think a lot of the time the team are just trying to kind of express ideas or come up with fun, thematic, interesting additives to armies. Again, I think the thing that people often overlook when they talk about Games Workshop's rules development and design team kind of principles when it comes to what they create and how they do it, I think a big thing for them is it's very hobby centric and very very kind of model collector based. The guys in the rules team typically are hobbyists and enthusiasts, and typically are creating rules to try to bring to life ideas and lore-based reasons for armies existing. They're trying to breathe life into the 40k world and give you as a player options to be creative and to recreate the things you may have read about in Black Library or watched on Warhammer Plus. So I don't necessarily know if they are creating these rules thinking that someone is going to immediately at the point of release drop everything and buy the new thing and then build armies exclusively around that. I think it's more there as a sort of rich tapestry that you can, pluck every now and again when you feel like you want to challenge yourself or explore new ideas. You might go back through these books and think, oh, this is a really cool little idea that no one's really thinking about. Maybe I could do something fun with this. I think there's a certain immediacy that the internet and the community give everything, where it's like, this exists in the world now, go, 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 where it's like, and it almost sort of goes against the grain of the long established culture of the hobby. But again, I don't know. I mean, it could definitely be done better, is the long and short of it. But I don't know. What do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. These books are probably more aimed at kind of, the general everyman of gaming, not people that are specifically just wanting to play tournaments, for example. I get that some people will look at it and go, I just want the rules because they're rules for my army, regardless of whether I'm a competitive player or not. I just want them because they might be useful to me. And then you go, but I don't want any of that other stuff. I don't want it for the armies that I don't collect. But, some people might collect all of those armies. Some people might collect, just enjoy reading the lore, for example, and want it for that reason. I remember back in 6th and 7th edition, people would always complain and be like, oh, I've got to buy this supplement for 2 pages of rules for my army. And the rest is like beautiful artwork and narrative lore and stuff like that. So it's like, and people just discount that. People are like, that's not real content. No, that's not worth value for money or paying for. Give that to me for free. I just want to pay for the rules because that's the bit I care about. But it's like, but other people do care about all of those other elements. And I remember, even with Vigilus, it's like, as a guard player, yeah, I got 4 or 5 pages of content. Technically nothing else bar, none of the other rules applied to me because I didn't collect any of those other armies. But it was still worth it in my mind. But for some people, it might not be worth it. And that's your own compromise. You've got to sort of decide upon whether it is or not for you. Yeah, that's it, really.
Yeah, I get that, mate. And I think that's right. I think, again, I don't think the designers are looking at this the same way as the community's looking at it. And I think the thing is that you've got to look at this from the perspective of it's a set of tools that you can dip in and out of. Obviously, there is stuff that's immediately, obviously competitively good. Look at the the Deathwatch stuff in this one. Sure, it's great. And because it's great, you're going to see people thinking, yeah, I want to take advantage of this. Same thing with the white shields for the Cadians. They're going to be looking at this. And we haven't even gotten into the NIDs and the Inquisition and all the other stuff that is in here that people are now thinking, oh, I need to reevaluate the entire way my army list functions in a competitive sense because new rule exists. And when that happens, I totally get it. When you're chasing the bleeding edge of the meta, new rules that upset that and add new opportunities to be on the bleeding edge of that are really valuable, but I don't think they're making this with that expressed outcome. I think they're just coming up with fun ways of actualizing things that exist in the lore, and they're trying to give us as hobbyists more options.
Yeah.
But I hate to say it, mate, I really need to go. So unless you have anything else to say, that'll be episode 109 in the bank. Done. What do you reckon?
Let's say goodbye, everyone.
Fantastic. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.